Madam Mayor, it's 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
It could be, yes.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to call this Monday, July 16th, City Commission Budget Work Session to order and ask the clerk to call the roll, please.
Mayor Pam Triolo,
Here.
Vice Mayor Andy Amoroso.
Here.
Commissioner Scott Maxwell,
Here.
Commissioner Omari Hardy,
Here.
Commissioner Herman Robinson.
Here.
Thank you.
If everyone would please rise for the pledge, led by Commissioner Hardy. All right, welcome everyone back. We are going to discuss the beach fund, the sanitation fund, and the general fund. Are there any special introductions, City Manager?
Yes, Madam Mayor, Commissioners, am I on? Testing. Good evening. This workshop tonight, we're going to be covering three different funds, I apologize. And we're going to hopefully hone in on some very specific policy areas and questions. I know that y'all have had some questions, and staff needs to hear back from you on these different areas. So in this public forum, we wanted to present these different funds and go over these questions. Our first presenter tonight is our own Lauren Bennett, who is the Deputy Director for Leisure Services, which means she's doing probably 20 other things as well. But she's going to be kicking off the discussion on the beach fund. So Lauren, it's all yours.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. Lauren Bennett, for the record, Assistant Director of Leisure Services. Like our City Manager said, we are going to be discussing the beach fund. There's a pretty picture of the beach. We're going to go over the fiscal operations overview. So we're going to discuss where we're at currently with revenues and expenses, discuss parking rate options, as well as the possibility of restructuring our loan. And then two big capital projects coming up for fiscal year 19, which is going to be our pier and our bus shelter. So currently, our revenue for fiscal year 19 is $3,194,198. Our expenses are $3,563,205. That includes our $550,000 loan repayment, as well as our $100,000 contingency money for any repair and maintenance that we might need on the property. So it leaves us at a current deficit of $369,000. To address it, staff brought up we could increase parking rates, which we'll go into depth on, and we could talk about restructuring the loan. At our last budget meeting, Mayor, you did request some information on other municipalities and their parking. So staff put together just kind of a spreadsheet on what other cities are charging. It's a range. It's $1.50 to $5 an hour, and some of them are doing a split weekday versus weekend pricing. Some are doing hourly, and I think Boynton is doing a day pass. They did switch it. Just looked today. They do have an on-season and off-season price. So that's an option we could look at too.
What are we charging?
Commissioner Hardy?
Sorry.
We're charging $2 an hour flat rate. You can switch to the next slide. So going off our fiscal 17 revenues, parking made $1,612,000. We brought back what it would look like if we were to increase parking by $1, which would bump us up to $3 an hour flat rate, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. So if we did that at $3 an hour, we'd have an additional revenue of $806,000. If you wanted to increase it by 50 cents, taking us to $2.50 an hour, you're looking at $403,000 of additional revenue. 25 cents, $201,000 of additional revenue. The second option we looked at for parking rates is a split. I kind of call it like an a la carte. So we looked at taking weekend transactions, because that's when we see the biggest uptick at the beach, to $3 an hour. So if you were to split weekends at $3 an hour and increase Monday through Friday parking to 50 cents an hour, collectively you're looking at an additional $644,000 of revenue. I do want to advise that if you were to consider the split, it would be confusing to our patrons at the guests, or who are guests, because if they were to come, let's say on a weekday, and it's parking is $3 an hour, or $2.50 an hour, and then they love their experience, they want to come back, and they come back on a weekend and it's more expensive, that could cause some frustration for those that don't pay attention. And I'm just going to advocate that people don't read the sign. So I know that would cause a little bit of stress on the client, and it would affect their overall feelings of coming back to the beach. So I just wanted to point that out to you guys. It could cause a little bit of confusion. That's parking rate option number 2. The second part is to discuss the loan repayment option, and I have asked our new finance director, Bruce Miller, to come up and speak a little bit about the loan repayment history options.
And while Bruce is stepping up, this will be his first public introduction. I believe he's had a chance to meet y'all, and he'll be meeting more in depth to go over some operational discussions so you get to know him better. But Bruce most recently comes from Annapolis. He's worked in different cities, larger cities, and has a world of experience. So we're really thrilled to have him on board. Wish you had been here earlier in the budget process, but we're glad you're here now. And he's jumped in with both feet this week, so we're really appreciative to have Bruce and want to introduce him.
Well, thank you very much for the introduction, City Council.
Welcome.
Thank you, sir. For the record, Bruce Miller, Finance Director. So before you, there's a loan repayment history. And I think it's important just to put it into context historically what we've been doing, and then from there maybe propose some ideas and concepts that we can move forward with. So we have 3 outstanding loans, one for $485,000, which came from an advance from the Capital Project Fund, an advance from the Water Fund of $4 million, and an advance of $2 million from the Self-Insurance Fund. So the total proceeds that were loaned to the fund was totaled $6,485,000. And then subsequent, you see through the years, repayments, $167,000 and $82,500 in year 14, and correspondingly the decrease in the outstanding loans. Same thing for fiscal year 15, but there was a $50,000 decrease in the Capital Project Fund, then on down the line. And then, so right now, the outstanding balance is $435,000 for the Capital Project Fund, $3,339,000 for the Water Fund, and $1.5 million in the Self-Insurance Fund. The 19 budget, correct me if I'm wrong, has a $500,000 repayment, which is hard to swallow, if you will. So we're taking some looks at potential options. And if you would, while I have a podium, if you would move forward where it says Beach Fund Debt Service options. It's a few pages forward. I believe one more. Okay, so thinking about some options to flatten that out, take that $500,000 to a lesser amount to provide flexibility. We were looking at different scenarios. This is also required as part of the IG's comments that there was really no loan agreement between the beach fund and the 3 other funds. So it's important that we, in the future council meeting, that we adopt such a loan agreement. But right now, there's a recommendation and we can tweak it. But just for presentation example, discussion points. So the water fund is owed $3.3 million today. The original was $4 million. The capital project fund had an original loan amount of $485,000, which is $435,000. And then the self-insurance fund of $2 million, which now has a $1.6 million outstanding balance. So the idea, if you turn the page, is to look at a process which we could have a level debt service, if you will, that we could bake into the budget, so you wouldn't have the peaks and valleys as you roll forward. A lower interest rate It looks like this.
We're all on the same page
Okay.
so far.
You look forward to one page.
So the loan agreement would satisfy the requirements by the AG's office. It would provide a interest rate scenario. It would maintain a discipline as part of the budget. And I think one of the most important things, it would maintain flexibility within the budget. It wouldn't put a hardship on the budget, but it would make these requirements so there would be flexibility to do other things moving forward. It would also allow,
Just one question.
Yes,
I'm
ma'am.
sorry. When you say it wouldn't put a hardship, I'm just trying to understand the,
terminology or,
just
Okay.
so the tranches are for what, or coming from where? So we refinance the loan?
no, well, right now, the concept is we have X amount of dollars outstanding.
Okay,
Okay, and then, so what we would do is pay back the water fund first,
okay,
okay? Which would, because there's, if I understand correctly, there's an rate impact on the water fund itself by a
Correct.
marginal amount. So
Gotcha.
this would decrease that burden from the water fund. So everything for the first, I believe about 10 years, would pay down the water fund.
Okay.
And then the next tranche would be the capital project fund. Okay, and that would take maybe a year and a half to pay down. And I have an amortization schedule you could take a look at. And then the last tranche would be the self-insurance fund. And that would be, I believe, 19 years of a repayment schedule. And again, this is just an example up for conversation and debate relative to, other parts of it.
what was the original date, Mike, on how long were we supposed to pay back this loan initially?
I want to say it was 12 years.
12
Yeah.
years.
And just to clarify something that Bruce just mentioned, in a previous workshop, it may have been last year, there was conversations about what the impact of this loan was on water utility rates.
Correct.
It was less than a half, 50 cents, somewhere in that range. So that's why he was saying in the first tranche that we would pay back. It was focused on maintaining your level of understanding that that wouldn't affect the rates beyond what we'd already discussed. So
Okay.
that's why he structured it that way.
Okay, so you focused on water first, and you said how long would that be? To
No.
pay back that part? 10 years?
I can give you an exact.
Sure.
That would take 11 years.
11 years,
Yeah.
okay. So we would do that one first, and then move to 2, and then move to 3 is your suggestion?
Correct.
Okay, Commissioner Hurd?
I just want to put out there that it would be 10 more years than the years that we've already given it. And the interest rate is very, very low, right? And so obviously, the further out, the longer this term gets, the less the money's worth. In the 19th year, for example, with the self-insurance fund, and the 10th year with the, and so I would have some questions about the interest rate. The other thing is I remember it being a 0.5% on rates, which is not insubstantial when we were factoring in, I think, 3% rate increases. So I mean that's like a, that's a sixth of an increase in the expected rate increase. It's I wouldn't call it I would say that it's a substantial difference, not too big a deal. And then I think the other consideration, the other thing is that everybody in the city, rich, poor, pays their water bills, and so it's a little on the regressive side. So I just
No, I'm just getting the
things to
information.
think about.
Just getting the information out
Yeah.
there. Vice Mayor, did you have something? Sorry. Go
And
ahead,
just to
City
clarify
Manager.
too, in our conversations with Bruce and staff, if we see that the beach fund is starting to do well, and I know that y'all are having discussions about finishing the beach project, the casino. If we see our fortunes starting to change and there's money, once we get everything taken care of, there's nothing to say that we can't pay back those other portions as well on a quicker, instead of waiting. But this is a conservative, thoughtful approach. It meets the intent that the Inspector General had, that we have an official agreement between the two funds. and that there's some kind of logic behind how we're going to proceed with this business model. So
But is this suggestion, and I'm just trying to wrap my head around it, I'm sorry, it's just a lot of different numbers and things. Is this suggestion in lieu of anything else? I mean, meaning like changing the parking rates, or, I mean, that has nothing to do with the suggestions that came prior to that, which is the parking rate changes.
well,
Is it one or the other?
Given the needs at the beach and not
We see $500,000 or 300 and something thousand
short, and then
Short.
this year there's also
So
in
is
the
it one
capital-
or the other?
in the
Is it the
capital side-
restructuring of the loan or the raising of parking rates? I mean, what are we looking at?
I think
Or is it
we would
both?
look for potentially both
Okay.
to help us
Just want to understand where
go
you're.
forward.
It sort of seemed like it was set up like one or the other, but I just,
But they're both kind of confusing, so we wanted to separate them out. But
Okay.
you could do one or the other. We're not saying that that's not possible.
okay. But either way, we have to still come up with the terminology for the loan so that we are adhering to the
Correct.
IGs.
Even though you're loaning the money to yourself, and every budget year you approved amounts, so there wasn't anything that was inappropriate except it's proper to have.
There wasn't a formality
loan-
set.
Yes, so that the public clearly understands what the agreement is between the funds that y'all establish, which is
Gotcha.
good government.
Vice Mayor?
Just for clarity, so we're talking about two different things here. You know, when we're talking about raising parking rates, you're short a little over $300,000. Any one of these parking rates will take you into a good place. And I'm looking at it completely separate. And then restructuring the loan, and just for clarity, we're talking about restructuring the loan in-house, we're not going anywhere else. And we're gonna make it very clear so the IG has everything they need. It's two separate entities. Okay, and I'm still a little concerned with, you know, we're 7 years into a loan that was supposed to be paid in 12, and now we're starting all over in essence, and, you know, we're talking about one piece of the loan isn't going, we're looking at another 11 years just for one piece of the loan, so I'm a little concerned that, we just keep pushing it out.
Commissioner Robinson?
And a couple things, just for clarity, when we talk about money from ourselves, the interest on that is because we've taken it out of one fund that exists, and so explain to me why we're talking about interest when the money was in one.
In theory, there's two ways of looking at it. I've seen where if you made interfund borrowings, you would charge the going interest rate that was on the market, because that would be the cost of doing business if you were to do it. Internal loans, you would serve the opportunity costs. So if I were to go down and take that $6 million and go to a bank, I could invest it at X, and return investment is what I would pass to the.
So we're really not talking about interest to borrow, we're talking about interest income that we didn't invest.
Yeah,
from
that
the
opportunity
fund,
cost, but you could look at it, you could structure.
which is
it-
different.
Yes, but you could structure it either way, and either way would it be appropriate. Or you can come up with a figure. The important thing is to have a loan agreement, stipulating exactly
According to
what,
the IG, yes.
yes.
I think we understand where the money came from.
Right.
My question is, we're not actually paying interest on that transfer. Is that,
It's factored in, Commissioner, Madam Mayor, if I could. It's factored into the payback numbers, but at a very low rate. Is it 1%?
so
Hold on can you use the microphone?
Corinne Elliott, Assistant Finance Director for the record. The interest rate on the payback on the loan is based on the current yield on our own investments for that current year.
that's what I was getting at.
Okay.
And so, when we talk about interest rates, we really should be talking about return on investment, not the fear of interest rates going up. Is that?
Well, when you do a loan document, the interest rate which is embedded, so that's why I was referring to.
Which is a
relative.
benefit to the water fund because we're supposed to be paying them more interest than they would have been getting on an investment. Is my,
Well, again,
Well, it's not a theory, it's how,
but again, the interest rate, you can have, for example, the city and cities go out to a water fund, and they have a below market interest rate on that water fund.
but we didn't do that. The money was in the water fund, is it?
No, what I'm saying is a state program, state revolving loan program where you can borrow below market rate. So the important thing is just to have a interest rate. It can be a market rate, it can be investment type thing, but that's a policy decision for you all to wrestle with.
Then it's sort of an academic number, not really a bank number.
Madam Mayor? Going from memory and having conversations with Steve Carr when we were looking at going out originally to borrow the money, if I remember the conversations when we had that presentation, we felt that we would get the money at a better rate paying ourselves because it was so low. It was more than we were getting on return on the money in the bank, if I said that correctly.
Yeah.
So we were actually sort of paying ourselves a little extra, but it was a de minimis amount in interest back to the fund than if the fund was sitting there just earning interest in the bank. And that's how it was originally presented as a discussion. In the terms of the loan going forward, are you suggesting that we should index it or have a flat rate?
I'm questioning if the money is in one pocket and we transfer it to the other pocket, what's the ramifications? And when you talk about interest, we're only talking about the loss in investment because we haven't borrowed it, in fact. We haven't invested it.
I think what happened during the discussion, Commissioner Robinson, I'm trying to remember back to that time. I think it was that we were trying to say that if it had to be financed through another form, we were trying to factor in the professional interest rate on the loans, should we have to go out for a loan so that we were in line with having an interest rate on it, should the financing mechanism need to be changed. So that's why we had done it that way.
And we're talking about not changing the financing method, just having it in an agreement.
Right, but the numbers were there, that in case we had to go out for financing on anything, because remember, the beach was closed, I mean, it was shut down for so long when we reopened it, so we weren't sure, how the business model was gonna perform when we first opened the beach, so that was sort of a.
Some of us knew how it was
Yeah, we all had our suspicions.
The other side is August 7th, we're going to be having a conversation on the plan. When are we going to talk about the cost of the building and the pool? That's not figured in any numbers yet.
What is in this budget is R&R, and you'll hear some information about some of the capital that we need to spend this year. But
Only
when
on pier
the
and-
business model and your decisions about what you want to do, which is, there's some lead time on that. We have time to make adjustments to the budget if necessary, but right now we're focused on current operations. And if I could provide another clarification, Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, I can't remember what you said about the number of years. Actually, this loan started technically in 2014, so it's coming up on 4 years. So it seems like it's gone on forever, but.
Does this, and just in relation to what we're discussing here, and then Commissioner Hardy, I'll come back. So is this saying, so instead of paying the $500,000 back, you would pay a smaller amount towards
373,
206, 670?
20670 would be the total interest that would be paid for the duration of the loan,
Okay. So
since the restructure.
okay, well, so the restructure, what I'm saying, so that's saying that we're not gonna be paying the $500,000.
well, under
A
the
year.
scenario that he said, we would pay the 1/3, I'm sorry, the 2/3 that makes up the money that came from the water fund, and pay that back on the schedule as originally contemplated, based on the fact that we had had a conversation about, as was mentioned earlier, the rates.
Okay, 'cause this is confusing. So let me just, I'm sorry, I'm getting it sound like I just wanna make sure that we're all on the same page. So am I paying $500,000 back in the next budget cycle? Not with
No.
this plan.
Well,
What am I paying?
currently budgeted, it is in there. It's
Okay.
at 500.
Correct. What is this telling me I'm paying?
If we rework the loan to where we're just paying the water, it would be $333,333.33.
$333,000.
A third of a million.
It would be $333,730.
Okay, and change.
So 10% of that. Okay. Hold on, Commissioner Hardy had his light on first, and then to you.
Yeah, so, I'm gonna address the interest rate thing, just, very briefly. I guess I see the need for, the beach fund to pay interest because the water fund will be poor if the beach fund does not pay interest, right? So like $100 10 years from now is gonna be worth a lot less than $100 today, right? And so we've gotta compensate the water fund and every other fund that we borrowed money from for the fact that it doesn't have access to that cash right now, where it can be spent on projects or where it can be earning interest in a bank or, somewhere else. So that interest rate, I think, is important. I don't see it as an academic thing. The other thing is back to the either or conversation about beach parking rates or this restructuring of the loan. And apparently it's not disjunctive, it's conjunctive. You guys want both. And so my question is, I don't understand the need to do both because the way that I see it here is that basically, let's say if you go back to slide 11, if you don't mind. Okay, so like right now, we're in the hole $369,000, right? So let's say that we choose option 2, right? You add 644,857 to that, right? So now you're in the positive by $275,000, right? If we adjust parking rates, right? Okay. In addition to that, if we restructure the loans from the beach fund to the water fund and the capital fund and the self-insurance fund, basically you'd be getting another $200,000, right? So you'd be at like 475 over and above, where you started from. And so, my question then is, what do you need the extra $475,000 for?
Go to the next
Could you?
pages, you'll see the
Yeah,
bus shelter.
Madam Mayor, and she'll get into that part of the presentation, which is some immediate capital needs, which seem to
I
come
don't.
up.
I have
But also, we need to build up
What do you have
the
in your-
fund balance. And right now, our fund balance is, I don't have any sheets in front of me.
We haven't gotten to that.
Okay.
Our intent was to also build up fund balance, which, going over the Stantec modeling, sometimes we've had to adjust our revenue expenses to try to drop money into it. This is a fund that needs to put some money in fund balance. So anything that's left over would drop into that. We try to get that up, especially if you're contemplating completing the casino project. There's going to be expenses and all kinds of things. And the maintenance in general. R&R at the beach, it's a very caustic and corrosive environment for everything, as you know, and we need to do a better job in painting and maintaining, so the money needs to be for that. That's the intent.
So it's you got these projects like the pier and the bus shelter that you want to pay for out of. Okay, and then there's fund balance, but those are the 3
Yes, sir.
things that you need the money for.
And that's why we said we could look at in the future, once we get everything settled, if we need to step up the payments. There's nothing that says that we can't come back and adjust the repayment schedules to accelerate for the other funds.
just need something
We
on
just
the
need some
books.
breathing room now so that the staff now can take a breather and accurately budget what we need to operate the beach at its best.
I appreciate that explanation.
Thank you. You were just using a figure of $333,000. Where does that figure come from?
The loan was structured, Commissioner, from 2/3 water fund and 1/3 insurance, self-insurance fund. So basically, it's taking the payment and just dividing it into thirds.
Then your payment so you're saying 2/3 of 500,000 is $333,000?
Yes, at least
Still-
that's what my accounting staff says.
Okay, so, that is dedicated towards paying back the water fund.
Yes, sir.
However-
That stays on track.
Right, so your PowerPoint presentation says it's $300,000.
Well, plus
Plus interest.
yeah. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, so the 333, well, wait a minute. The $333,000 is 2/3 of the principal.
May I provide the test schedule?
Please, yes, sir. I'm glad you're here.
I just want to make sure the numbers are, we went through this when we built the damn thing.
And that's true too. And also understand when we bring back the official loan agreement document, the numbers will be really
Right. Okay. Thank
to
you.
the penny. But he did an amortization schedule.
Okay. All right, I'm done. Thank you.
Okay, a couple things, not to beat a dead horse, but, city manager, you had mentioned, the loan repayment started in 14. When did we actually build the project and take the money out of the water fund?
It was several years prior, Vice Mayor. I don't remember, but the payments hadn't actually started until we
Okay, but
opened. Yes, sir.
the way I look at it is, once you took that money
Yeah.
out of, from the water department, which is actually a citizen-based company, you took the money from them, so. The other question, and I know we haven't got there yet, but can we get a breakdown of the Lockhart Municipal Pier and the bus shelter? Where those numbers, because I've been part of the bus shelter, and last number I remember on the bus shelter was 45,000. It could have been 65,000, but I've been in those conversations.
Yes, sir.
Not most recently, but it is now 250,000. So how did it jump from 45, maybe 65 to 250?
It was the location, I believe, and some of the expenses once we got into actually engineering where it encroaches in a drainage retention area along the, and it was a painful process to select with.
Then I think we need to have more
Yes,
conversation
sir.
on that and on behalf of the people, because, when we had those conversations, it wasn't anywhere near. 200,000 was what the county wanted from us, and we were saying no. If we're gonna build a bus shelter for 250,000 and pay for it,
Well,
in my opinion, we need a little bit more from the county, because remember, we had a bus that went to the beach prior to construction. During the construction, the bus was stopped. And now they want us to build a $250,000 bus,
They didn't want us to build the 250,000. That it had nothing to do with them. Go ahead, Jamie.
Jamie Brown, Public Services Director for the record. In dealing with Palm Tran, we actually have a set of construction documents right now. Before, what we were talking about was just the actual cost of the shelter itself and not the actual construction to actually get the shelter where it needs to be. And we had looked at the top of the dune up there, which it doesn't work up there. So the
I've
actual,
been in the meetings, yeah.
yeah, so the actual location
Yeah,
has
it
to
was at the
be
bottom.
at the bottom. As the city manager mentioned, there's a retention area where we now have to deal with stormwater issues and some other things. We have to kind of shave off one of the islands so we can actually make the turn, the buses can make the turn.
Okay.
So once the engineering was actually done and the plans were done, the cost actually increased.
Okay, not to beat the dead horse, I'd like to see those plans and see, because again, in my opinion, it jumped tremendously. And I was relying on you guys to negotiate, not to get from 45.
Well, we have the cost. We haven't entered into any official arrangement with Palm Tran. They did their due diligence and got the cost. So
And that's not to Palm Tran, by the way.
That's our.
that's our construction. Yeah.
cost to build.
In-house.
In this configuration, but this is
In-house.
something that's fairly new.
In-house.
No, this would not be built in-house.
No, but your estimates were in-house. You didn't go out.
Originally,
This is
Correct, that was original, that was the original cost of the shelter itself, outside of the actual construction. When Commissioner just mentioned like 45 or 50,000, that was not to do the entire project, that was only for the shelter.
Yeah.
Vice Mayor's got his buzzer off here for. Go ahead.
Yes, could somebody tell me what the median price of a house in Palm Beach County is, please?
I think it's around
And-
340.
I'm hearing
One at a time, guys,
Madam
please.
Mayor,
Yes.
340,000.
Okay, I will never vote for a $250,000 bus stop.
Commissioner Robinson?
Well, I applaud Commissioner Maxwell. And I'm even questioning why we're even talking about this before we at least look at a consultant that's being paid almost that to redesign traffic and parking and such. at the beach. Are we being forced to do this by the county?
No,
Okay.
Madam
Th-
Mayor?
yes.
I'm sorry.
Well, I'm trying to understand why we jumped ahead on a bus stop when we're going to be talking about traffic pattern and a lot of other things that are maybe going to happen at the property.
Madam Mayor,
And how we can estimate 45,000 for a building and not estimate the foundation that it's going to go on.
Madam Mayor,
City
it's not
manager.
that simple, and it's not comparable to a house. It's not comparable to just a pull-off. This is actually building road base and extending over into a drainage area with retention.
goes into-
And we have to get all the permitting. So those kinds of prep work move the cost estimates. Good, bad, or indifferent. It's not just about the structure. So
It scares me.
the reason we got into this discussion was we heard repeatedly from citizens and different people, they wanted the bus service back at the beach. And in the many discussions we had with Palm Tran, the way the facility was designed, it couldn't really handle the bus at the top. There's handicapped issues they needed to pull out. It became a big morass. So we finally got through, and I know that there was meetings with Vice Mayor Amoroso and the mayor with Palm Tran to the point where we were moving ahead with designs to facilitate them restarting the bus service. There was a whole nother discussion about the actual cost to do the service, which they originally wanted us to pay for. So you got the place for the bus to land, and then you got the cost of the service, and all that was in the air. What we're saying is, if this is a serious consideration, based on what we have in the designs and what we've been told by the professionals, it will cost in this magnitude $250,000. Hopefully it'll come in under that bid. Two, we want to budget for it. If we don't, then that's fine with us. Let's take the bus service from the beach off the table and we'll go move on to some other issues. But it needs to be budgeted this year coming up.
Commissioner Robinson?
Have we actually spent money on this project up to now,
No.
other than in-house work?
The only thing we
work.
spent up to this point in time is to actually have the plans done. We have Matthews Consulting who did the actual construction documents
So how
for
much,
the actual bus stop.
how much have we spent so far then? Out of
Let's-
cash, out,
Basically $24,000 for the actual design itself.
all right.
But as the Assistant City Manager just mentioned, he reminded me, you know, when this initially came up, when we had the initial discussions with Commissioner Kerner and everything, they were just talking about having the bus stop at the stoplight at the bottom, which you can't do that in that right turn lane. We only have one right turn lane right there. And then they were talking about their drivers need to stop there for 20 minutes to come up to the bathroom. We can't block that up. That's going to jam our entire beach up. We had to do an actual dedicated bus bay, which means we're now going into that drainage retention area right there, which adds to all this cost. So how they were wanting to do it at first is just stop at the bottom and we'll just back up traffic. That's not going to work for our beach. So it has to be designed properly. So that's where the actual construction documents came into place.
Just to keep it moving along, can we have a consensus on this and then go to the next,
Oh, should it be that easy, Commissioner
Well-
Robinson? I don't know, can we? Vice Mayor? Go ahead.
Okay, so this has been my project. This was my project when I sat on the CRA board. I brought it forward. Staff, to be honest with you, didn't like it from day one. At this point, I'm not comfortable with 250. I'm more concerned that it never came back to me in any form, being that I was the lead talking about it, that it jumped from a 45, a 65 to 250, and this is the first I'm seeing of it. But I totally agree with Commissioner Robinson. If we're looking at redoing or possibly redoing a beach project, this needs to be tabled. It needs to be part of, it should have been part of the beach project from day one. So we're not talking about it now, but because it wasn't, we were trying to bring it back in some form, trying to bring a trolley back, trying to bring a bus. The people need to be able to be mobile. But at this point, I say take it off the table because it should be part of the whole beach pool project that we're looking at.
And just to answer your question, we just got the 100% documents back like last Thursday. So it's not that we've had them for a while, we just now got them back.
Commissioner Hardy?
I was here last Thursday.
It just seems to me, well, I'll put it this way, I do want to draw a distinction between paying $250,000 for a bus stop versus paying $250,000 to alter the physical environment in order to accommodate a bus stop. I think that's different. I do think that people who don't own cars should be able to get all the way to the beach. And, you know, gosh, you know, we at every level of government subsidize car ownership. It's hard to imagine the amount of subsidies car owners get. So, you know, it just sucks. I mean, people want to be able to take a bus to the beach, and I feel like we should accommodate that. At the same time, I do feel like, you know, we do have this huge plan to redo the entire beach project. I guess, you know, my question is, what CPZ, I think, is the firm who we hired to do the project at the beach. Has this been on the table for them? Is this something that they're thinking about, that they have been incorporating into the work that they've been doing? Because we're supposed to hear from them on what, August 7th?
Their focus, Madam Mayor, has been on the casino building area and the pool building area, with the exception of the parking to the south. The entranceway hasn't been something that
So-
they've been
One at a
focused
time, please.
So there's basically, they're not going to come back with a plan to accommodate a bus stop anywhere else.
unless one of y'all mentioned it or it was brought up as one of the issues that is going to be presented. No.
None of us did, at
If
least
we
that
had
I
known
know
about
of.
it.
Well,
In all
One at a
fairness,
time,
I
please.
don't believe that they're addressing the road into the beach where
Yeah.
the bus
So-
would be.
so is it possible for them to incorporate this into the work that they're doing right now?
Only, Madam Mayor, only through consultations with Palm Tran and where they will allow a bus stop to go. This is a relationship between their rules, regulations, requirements, timing, union things. That they have a whole bunch of criteria that's pretty long. That's how this spot was located. We originally thought we could just stop at the top of the hill on the circle, or have them turn and come up, through. No. They have a bunch of reasons and rules that do not allow them to do that. So this was the agreed to spot.
My question was, is it possible for CPZ to incorporate putting, into their plans for the casino building and the pool, a bus stop somewhere other than where Palm Tran said it should go? It's not. So basically tabling it now is basically killing a bus stop at the beach.
Well, they're,
May I?
Yeah, once you done.
just on the location itself, they weren't willing to go through the parking lot at all.
Right.
With all the traffic, we covered it. It will throw off their timing.
So it absolutely must be where Palm Tran says it's going to
They
be.
wanted to enter the beach, make the loop, come right back out without having to go through the parking lot.
If-
to deal with the-
Is that a yes?
If I may,
Well,
Madam Mayor.
I have a line of questions I was trying to.
Juan Ruiz, Assistant City Manager for the record. Just to add clarity, and those are good questions, Commissioner Hardy. Jamie's right. Palm Tran does not want to traverse onto the property. You want to get out, in and out as quick as possible. One of the reasons, part of the design change was to create the bus bay similar to what's outside of here at CVS. We did not want them to stop in the road, which is what they were proposing initially, which created the snowball of the cost. Secondly, CPZ, and as far as their marching orders for design, was based on a very particular footprint, which was casino building, pool, parking. We can go back and say, do a change order to their design and say, add a bus stop within the project scope that we've already given you, and delay, per se, the construction of this bus shelter. The goal was to have this bus shelter designed, bid it out, and built by January 1st if possible. So I can easily go back to Chris and CPZ and say, in addition to your scope, to the north, create a bus bay in this location, which has been approved by Palm Tran, as far as where we want it to locate. But by no means do we want a bus stopping in the middle of traffic with the congestion we have now.
Well,
We-
let Commissioner
and
Hardy
we've
continue, 'cause he
looked-
had some more questions.
And in addition to that location, we looked at stops on the western border along A1A. We looked at the southern entrance. We looked within the property. We even looked at the pavilion that's kind of at the bottom. We looked at a lot of different options before we settled on eastbound off to the west. We even looked at Old Bridge Park, and they didn't want to cross over because you don't want to send pedestrians back and forth across A1A for the bus shelter. And then there wasn't enough space for the bus bay to pull in. So we've explored this to infant.
I guess, so my question is whether CPZ incorporates it into what it is that they're doing for us or not. Can the location change from where Palm Tran
No.
says it needs. So okay, so
No,
whether
we've
CPC
explored
plans
that.
for it or whether we play, it has to be in this one location.
Not unless
period.
you want to create some significant site plan changes, which we haven't pushed the envelope that hard. But regardless, the Palm Tran wants to go east-west on this property. They do not want to go north, south, east, west, or any combination thereof.
So this is basically, do we want a bus stop at the beach or not?
Right. And correct. And to add, I don't want to say add relief, sort of saying adding relief to the conversation, but sales tax dollars could be used to fund a public purpose, public benefit project. Parks and Rec improvements is a big part of that conversation. So just for consideration, that's something that you should know.
Mr. Robinson?
There's quite a few things. I'm asking for all of our patience, because this is the only time we get to have this conversation amongst ourselves. So I would ask that the many questions that we have are accommodated to a certain extent, because the sunshine law doesn't allow. How do we have to? How much is Palm Tran going to cost us to do the bus service? Versus, if that's where we're going, they're going to want money from us, right? Why do we have to contract with Palm Tran when? Do we know how much a city private bus would cost?
Go ahead, City Manager, you want to tell?
Madam Mayor, Commissioner, there was discussion most recently spurred through comments and presentations at the TPA with the mayor, I know with Palm Tran folks. Basically, the stance is that the bus existed prior, as the vice mayor said, and that it is unfair and unreasonable that the county would expect us to pay for the operations. So that's the stance going back to the Palm Tran staff and to Virginia Baker.
So we
But
don't
you
have
want
an
to answer?
agreement on a bus yet, but we're going to build a bus stop.
No, sir.
Okay, good. Because
This is the budget.
let's get the cart
Madam
before the
Mayor?
horse.
This is the budgeting process,
Right.
just in case that
This
happens.
this puts the fuel in the tank if it works out.
Okay. I'm concerned, in my attempt to converse with CPZ, I was discouraged, and I was disappointed that the interest in the commission didn't exist enough to at least bird dog the progress from April to the August 7th. And maybe we could have made some adjustments to CPZ through the commission. I'm really disappointed that the communication between CPZ staff and the commission isn't what it should be.
Okay, Vice Mayor, Pro Tem, Commissioner Maxwell.
So the bottom line is this: whether we consider this bus stop as a standalone project or we incorporate it somehow with the CPZ process, the cost is going to end up being the same. Was that a safe assumption?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it really doesn't matter whether we include it in the CPZ or not. It comes down to whether or not we want to invest $250 million for a fistful of people to ride the bus.
Yes, sir.
And I think that's it. I disagree with Commissioner Robinson. We have a lot of things on our plate, and dealing with CPZ and this beach project isn't necessarily, my first priority. Thank you.
250 here, 250 there.
Commissioner Harden, one at a time, please.
I guess first of all, this is what Route 67, the bus route. What's the route? It's Route 60 something, right? The east-west route. 67.
71.
Okay, so my understanding is that ridership along that route is pretty high.
Yes,
It's okay. So
extremely high.
it would be more than a fistful of people who would use this bus stop. The other thing, and this is kind of an aside, right? But for those of us who care about this, and I know Madam Mayor is all on top of this, if impact fee money were allowed to be used on things other than just road improvements. If they were allowed to be used on mobility options, then this wouldn't be an issue because we would have another lever of negotiation with the county, but the county has this antiquated impact fee model that we're not going to get into. But this is something that you might want to talk with Commissioner Kerner about, and potentially 6 other county commissioners, because lots of money leaves the city in impact fees and it doesn't come back because somehow or another it just quite doesn't fit what we need, and it doesn't fit what we need because the program is poorly conceived. The other thing is, look, I think it's really important to give people the opportunity to get to the beach by bus. And I understand $250,000 is a lot of money. I am very sensitive to that. But it would be a great thing if we could find a way to get a bus stop there, because people would use it. People who would have difficulty getting to the beach otherwise would use this bus station. And so I think it's something that we need to think about. And by the way, our residents asked for this, right? Our residents asked for us to work on getting bus service all the way to the beach. Right, and I think that everyone involved has done a good job thus far in negotiating with the county to make sure that what we pay for is not unreasonable. I think it's, by the way, there are people at the county who have used their political capital to get us this far in this discussion, and it would be a shame to disappoint them when we have to continue to work with these people throughout their time in elected office. I think it's important to get bus service to the beach. It's what our people asked for. We have spent all sorts of money on we're apparently going to spend $100,000 on a Parks and Rec study, right? Like, can we spend $250,000 to get people to the beach by bus? I think it's not unreasonable.
I'm going to just chime in here for a second because I had some of the most recent conversations, again, through the TPA. As the Vice Mayor mentioned, he had very lengthy discussions with Palmtran. And, in a perfect world, let's look at it. My approach has been, just as the city manager said, this is not creating a new route, which is what we came up against. This is the restoration of a route that just simply disappeared. It came to the beach when the beach project happened. Then all of a sudden it came to A1A. They were dropping off at the corner of A1A. Then they were dropping off on our side of the bridge, down at the base of the bridge, and then they just stopped coming all together with no notice, no warning, no see you later, no love you, thanks a lot, just gone. So that was the number one. So the whole first thing was appealing to the county to, again, remind them that it is the restoration of a route that disappeared and was taken away from us for no reason. So we appealed to them to not have to pay those fees and have set precedents, too, of communities that have not had to pay fees and I will go to task to deal with that as necessary. The conversations from the TPA's version is they're enhancing, Palmtran is enhancing all of their routes from the western communities east. There's a huge consensus in the western communities that Lake Worth is their downtown. Wellington, Green Acres, whatever, they consider us their downtown, and they want access in the western communities also to come use our beach. Try to get a parking spot anywhere near the beach on the weekend, folks. Have you been there lately? Impossible. If we can get more people to use ridership on the bus, that certainly would be lovely. And it also connects to West Palm Beach. West Palm Beach, though it's called West Palm Beach, has no beach. They use our beach. There's an east-west connector. There's a north-south connecting bus to the east-west bus so that it can be taken both north and south, and that will come in and connect from this one. The TPA has taken great interest in this and is trying to help us resolve this issue with them. Palmtran has been very cordial. We had very good meetings with them, I thought. And again, this is a possibility. It may not happen in this budget cycle, but I think, returning that option to the beach is definitely what I've heard along in our community, as well as I think it's a necessary thing. I'm not happy that, the cost of a bus shelter to retrofitting new land and taking pieces of some areas and fitting them and changing the sewers and the drainage issues and all of that kind of stuff was not at all what we had anticipated. But it's cost of doing business, unfortunately. And I don't think it'll even come to that much money, to be quite honest with you. But it's budgeted in there at a certain number for that specific reason. None of that is going to Palmtran. Hey, look at it. We've got Croysville Park right there. Palmtran is run by who? The county? right? It's run by the county. We have Coreyville Park up there. Why doesn't the bus go through the county side of the park? Things that make you go, But I think that our community needs it a little bit more.
And Madam Mayor, the message from the city's been consistent from the early days when we started meeting with David Kerner and the folks at the county as well as the Palm Trans staff. I know that the Vice Mayor was consistent in saying the same thing, and then you through the TPA most recently. So they understand, I think, where the city's coming from. It's just to get them off a dime.
Right, but their end result was that if we budgeted this in, that they could very well resume service in the winter. That was their comment. Mr. Robinson?
I didn't get the cost after the bus shelter is built, the cost for the system.
Nothing will cost.
No cost, zero cost to us. So
That's
we
what
get a
we're
bus
working
to
on.
the beach for $250,000.
That's what we're working on right now. May happen, may not happen,
Is that-
but that's
is
what we're
that-
working on, yes.
Is that how it's,
Yes, Madam Mayor. Commissioner, it's the landing spot for the bus, and that's
and
what
the
we're
system, we don't pay
We
into
do
the
not pay
system?
O&M.
We
No
don't pay into
operations.
Nothing.
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 That's, makes a little difference.
Vice Mayor?
And what happened to the $200,000 that they wanted originally? Is that off the table now, or are we still negotiating that?
Well, they would obviously like to have money, but that's off the table from the conversations most recently.
But I would want to make sure that we get something in writing that if we're building a $250,000 bus
Yes, sir.
spot, that
I
the
can still-
$200,000.
I wrote a letter to the county.
Look,
We have a meeting scheduled coming up.
Madam Mayor, Vice Mayor, the agreement, the interlocal agreement that we would enter into, I imagine would spell that out. So
Okay,
we
I
would
just
bring
wanna
that
make
back to
sure
you
that-
for obviously approvals.
Now, one, let me ask you, originally the bus stop was on the west side. And I think I heard you say it's now on the east side?
No, the
Where's the actual
the
bus stop? that
proposed
we're
bus
looking at
stop
now?
will be on the north side of the property going eastbound. So if you're exiting the property on the right-hand side, right next to where, just below decal parking, you know, that little strip of parking that borders the western side of the property,
So it would be on the north side,
right, at the base of the property.
but on,
Westbound.
at the westbound,
We
not
use
eastbound.
Before you go up the hill.
Yes,
West, heading west.
Westbound.
heading
the
west
north-
back over the
Okay.
bridge.
On the
Okay, so
north
that-
side of the
you had said
property.
east, and I'm
Yeah.
more concerned.
So the initial proposal was to stop next to the dumpster area in the road.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
So we're still on the north side,
Correct.
west side,
Yes, sir.
basin.
Correct. And then the idea of creating a bus bay, again, to prevent them from stopping at the top of the loop, the roundabout, there just wasn't enough land to do that. The goal was to keep them off of traffic because of the weekend congestion
Well,
already.
and I'm more comfortable with it being on that side
Right.
than the east side, because if we're looking at doing anything to the
Right.
actual structure of the east side,
Right.
it would concern me that we're building and then we may have to take out or reconstruct, or it's shut down during a construction project.
Right. And I think, and for logistically for Palm Tran, that's a logistical, it's a collector stop where they catch up on their timing for their routes. So they need the ability to stop up to 20 minutes. We call it a bathroom break, but really there's a reason for it, and it's for them to time their timing at their bus stops along the way. So it was even more imperative to get them off of our natural flow of traffic while they take that break.
Vice Mayor?
I'm a little confused. I think the conversation originally began and there was strong discussion about the county wanting money from us to operate the bus. And I keep hearing that we're hoping beyond all hope that somehow we're gonna negotiate our way out and have nothing to pay. I guess the real question I have is, which comes first, the chicken or the egg? When are we gonna find out whether we're on the hook to pay $1 for operations, number one?
Sort of my question.
And here's something else. I want to offer up a bit of a, I don't know if you want to call it a history lesson or what, but we've often talked, there's often been a lot of discussion about Palm Tran's service levels and the fact that they don't do a very good job running east and west. They do a great job going north and south in the county, but east to west, not so much. Okay, now we're talking about an east-west route, and I would dare say that if the demand was there, Palm Tran would have a bus stop there to begin with. Okay, if the demand was there, number one. Number two, I would really like to know what their ridership numbers were prior to them disconnecting the service, and there must have been a reason why they started cutting it back. Okay, number three, I've only talked or know of 2 or 3 people in this community that have expressed a sincere interest about a bus stop up there. And finally, as we all know, most of the people that use the beach are from out of town. Okay, most of the people that use our beach are from out of town. Once again, I'll throw it out there like I did so many times before about how we're gonna pay for the existing beach development. Somehow, we've gotta come up with a way to get the folks that come from outside our city to pick up the cost of the amenities they're getting for free from on the backs of the city of Lake Worth's wonderful residents. Okay, enough with the, providing a playground for Central Palm Beach County and nobody else kicking in $1 to help us out here. That's all I have to say.
Commissioner Hardy?
The commissioner from District 1 said that if ridership was high, Palm Tran wouldn't have stopped it. I think that would be true if Palm Tran prioritized its riders. It doesn't necessarily do that all the time. Lots of times Palm Tran makes decisions that negatively affect their riders because it just works out better for them because they're trying to accomplish something. So I can't say that it's true that if ridership was high, Palm Tran wouldn't have stopped it because Palm Tran has a history of not making decisions that are in the best interest of its riders. The other thing that I would say is I personally heard more than 2 or 3 people talk to me about having a bus stop at the beach. Secondly, it's not just people who are within the city who would use it. Obviously, it would be great, if they did. The other thing is that this isn't actually being paid for if we were to do it with tax dollars. It's being paid for with money out of the beach fund. Most of it we were raising from automobile owners who are coming from out of town to visit our beach. And so to me, it's the most equitable thing in the world that people in this city who are poor and people who live outside of the city along the Lake Worth corridor who are poor and who do not own an automobile can get on the bus and ride from where they live or from near where they live all the way to our beach, and to have that subsidized by automobile owners from all over the county and from all over the world who've come here to rent a car. I think that's like the most equitable solution we could possibly have. And unfortunately, it's going to cost $250 again because we have to alter the physical environment, but people want a bus stop at the beach. Also, it's fair to allow people who don't have cars to have access to the beach. Now, unless we embark on a trolley service, this is the only option that we have here. And so it really comes down to, do we or do we not want a bus stop at the beach? I'm in the yes camp.
Vice Mayor?
One more bite of the apple. Okay, so the bus stopped going to the beach because there was construction and they could not get to the beach. End of story. It wasn't because of ridership, it wasn't. Now fast forward, you had a lot of different changes of employees at Palm Tran. So when I first started with Palm Tran, when I sat on the CRA board, it was a whole different set of people than it is now. And they're excited about actually doing this. As far as the cross promotion and the marketing, you get on Tri-Rail, you get on the fast train, you hop a bus to the beach. It's tourists. It's not just poor people that don't have vehicles. It's everyone. I walk to the beach on a regular basis. I think it would be cool to hop on a bus and take half that walk off mine, but that's just me. But a lot of people don't walk to the beach. They need to take a vehicle because they want to take beach chairs and towels and kids. How cool would it be to be in downtown Lake Worth and live in Lake Worth and be able to walk a block up with your chairs and your kids and hop on the bus to get to the beach? So, that's really what it's about. I'm a yes, but I'm a yes if we clearly have it spelled out that we are building a bus shelter. There is no $200,000 coming from the city of Lake Worth. That, it's a partnership that we're both embracing. It's great advertisement. When we talked to Palm Tran, we talked about advertising Lake Worth fun events and things on the side of the buses, and they were all excited about that. So it's a cross promotion, it's a partnership, and I think it can be a great thing.
Commissioner Maxwell?
Sounds to me like Palm Tran's getting all the money. We spend $250,000 putting in a bus stop, and then we're gonna pay to advertise on their bus.
not paying.
One at a time, please.
They're gonna give us free advertising?
That was.
We have,
Well, we can't,
we
you
have
know-
discussed this ad nauseum, people. I understand what you're all talking. Do you think for 1 second, first of all, let's look at this chicken egg, okay? Let's look at this from a common sense perspective, okay? Because we're going off on tangents here, and I really don't see, I think this circle is spiraling out of control. Let's look at it from like a normal person standpoint. We're in negotiations. We don't want to pay them the $200,000. We need to do an upgrade there. We're obviously not going to spend one penny unless we have an agreement from them. And that agreement, based on the correspondence that I've said, is that we've invested our own money and our own time in this, and you're reinstating a route that was already in existence, that we don't want to pay any money for it. So obviously, let's be realistic, okay? We're not going to spend money, and we're not going to need this if we don't reach the negotiation with them for no money. Do you understand? That's the conversation. If they don't agree on doing it for no money, this goes away, bye-bye, done. Because we can't afford to kick in for that. And again, that's where my argument before about the county. This is not just a Lake Worth beach, this is also a county beach, and they're a county organization, and they're whatever. And that's my argument, and that's where we're at. So again, this goes bye-bye if they don't do it for that. Everyone got it? Okay.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, for your bringing this all back to reality. And let's talk about reality. Normal people don't spend $250,000 on a bus stop. Okay, normal people don't spend that kind of money for a bus stop for somebody to sit down and wait for a bus. Okay? And the other issue is, if Palm Tran is so excited about this, let them split the cost of the construction of the stop. Who paid for the stop that was up there before, is my question. And I'll bet you Palm Tran paid for it. So why don't they pay for their own bus stop?
It's not, we've already talked about it. The bus shelter alone is not $250,000. The shelter alone is not $250,000.
Is it your intention to insult my intelligence, or is it just, are we splitting hairs here? It's $250 to provide that service. So let's not get hung up on whether 80,000 or 60,000 goes to the structure and the other goes into the, the site improvements. That's not the point. The point is, it's $250,000.
That our staff told us would make would be the thing. It was not something that somebody told us to do. That our staff of experts came to us to tell us that this would be just the way they come to us and advise us on any other circumstance. This wasn't something pulled out of a hat from Palm Tran or drilled into their heads by an alien spacecraft or anything. It was what they came to us to say to do. Okay, I'm not going to argue. Trust me, I'm not going to argue on this. Commissioner Hardy, go ahead.
Yeah. I share Commissioner Maxwell's frustration that Palm Tran wants us to pay for even a portion of it, but it appears that that's their negotiating position and that they're not budging from the fact that we have to pay for the capital aspect of this project.
And they want us to pay in addition to that.
Right, and they wanted us to pay for both the capital investment and the operations, and we negotiated them down from the operations to just the capital investment. It would be great if we could take them down even further. It would be nice to try. Perhaps we should. Perhaps we should say, you know what, we'll pay for the site improvements and you guys pay for the actual installation there. You know, maybe that would be a nice line for us to negotiate. I think we should give it a shot. But the thing is, I guess our residents really, really want bus service, whether or not, they use it. I know that more than a few people have come to me and said this would seem like a good idea. And if we can't get bus service, perhaps we should get a trolley, right? More than one resident has come to me with that. I guess, the only thing I would add is, obviously, as the mayor said, we would not spend a dime on this if we did not get assurances that there would actually be bus service there. I would add something else. I would like to make sure that the bus service is there for a long period of time. Right, so like more than 10 years, more than 15 years, we should get some time period where Palm Tran is obligated to operate that route coming all the way to the beach. There, I think that would be important, and maybe we should decide, what that is, and not move from it. The other thing is, Commissioner Maxwell, I understand that you don't want us to spend an exorbitant sum of money on a bus stop. Does it? And this is my question to Commissioner Maxwell: does it make him feel better? How we finance this investment in the bus stop? Like, it's not coming from our taxpayers, right? It's coming from people who drive to the beach and pay for parking, right? So, like, in this case, it's not City Hall. It's literally people, many of whom do not live in the city, who are coming here and they're giving us a bus station with their money. I would like to know how Commissioner Maxwell feels about that.
Commissioner Maxwell.
You know, $250,000 is $250,000. It's too much to pay for that particular item. And number two, I don't feel like I should have to subsidize public transportation in that fashion. Okay, I would not feel good coming to the beach knowing that part of my parking dollars are going to provide a bus stop for $250,000. That would not make me feel good at all. It's foolish to spend $250,000 for somebody to sit down and wait for a bus. Think about that.
Commissioner Hardy.
This will be the last thing I say. At every level of government, we subsidize car ownership, right? This county has spent untold sums helping people move from place to place by themselves in their cars. Can we let people sit at can we treat public transit the same way we treat car infrastructure? If we did, we'd be spending a lot more on public transit than we spend right now on car infrastructure. Like, we're looking at them differently, even though they're both modes of transportation, and I don't understand why. And the other thing is, car ownership, gosh, it's a private good that creates a public obligation, and the opposite is true of transit. It's a public good that apparently creates a private obligation among the people who pay for it, right? So I think we should think identically about transit as we think about, it's not unimportant to let people ride the bus to the beach. It's not.
I want to just remind you all, while I stay very calm,
You're doing well so far.
I'm trying my hardest. I really am. I just want to remind you that once your opinion is known and you've made an argument, not 16 arguments, it really is overkill. Once you've made your points and we know where you stand in the argument, to continue to go back and forth and just keep expressing your opinion over and 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 over. That's how it feels to me.
You missed a couple.
Yeah, just so you know what it feels like to me, and I'm sure the people at home too. Once we know what your opinion is and you've made your points, I think really the matter should be done at that point. And I won't need to be so patient, because everyone can see that you're once you've done it, that's what your job is, to be here, to give your opinion, state your points, argue your points, not 16 times,
How many times?
preferably 1 or 2. Okay, and that is being patient. All right, and then we go on, because we have business to do here, just based on the extraordinary personalities, and I love each and every one of you. I know you all can probably talk an hour each on your own about every given topic because you feel passionate about it. I could too, and I know we all could, but that's not really what our business is to do here. It's to state your opinion on it, make your arguments, and make decisions. And when this goes on and on and on and on and on and on
We got it.
and on, okay? All right, last round, and then my patience is gone. Commissioner,
I was going to ask your opinion on sanitation fund, but
I would love to get to it. That'd be great.
But I am in favor of public transportation. I certainly wish you all the luck in the world, or all the success in the world of negotiating with the county. And I'll wait until you have your final with the county.
Vice Mayor.
Moving on, so the last piece of the capital project is the pier. When we see those numbers, can I suggest that we bring forward also the documentations that outline our agreement with Benny's on the Beach? Just because there's 2 new people up here, we haven't seen it in a while, exactly what Benny's is responsible for. I know that there was some improvements that were borderline. I don't know if we cleaned that up under our contract. Lighting, what can and cannot be done in and around Benny's, because they are restaurants and they need more lights, but because of the turtles, what portion of the pier they're responsible for, and what portion we're responsible, just so it's clear as we're moving forward.
It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Maxwell?
Thank you. I just want to remind everybody that when it comes to subsidizing public transportation, we're already paying our taxes for that subsidy. So I really don't want to pay twice, or 3 times, as a matter of fact. And that's exactly what we'd be doing. We're already paying Palm Tran to provide a service, okay, and the infrastructure for their bus stops. So I look at that as a service and capital that we've already paid into as taxpayers. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay,
So-
shall we continue?
Yes. So just to add some more fun to the conversation.
Yay.
About 6 months ago, we had an underwater engineer do a survey of our pier. And the findings were that the concrete piles need to be jacketed. Concrete pile caps need crack repairs and patching. Concrete beams need crack sealant, and the timber panels and the hand railing need to be replaced. If you've been to the pier at all, it's actually visible. You can see some fracture lines. You have some spalling underneath the pier. It is vital that we get ahead of it and address it, hopefully in this budget. The cost is $400,000, and I do have a breakdown of the estimate if you would like to see it. It is pricey, but it's a rather large project that I would like to ask that it be considered for the penny sales tax, just an upward in the beach fund. Can you go to the summary?
I might as well join it.
So, when
Commissioner Hardy?
yes, so like, okay, so you would like for the $400,000 for the pier to be paid for from the penny sales tax and not from the beach fund?
For your consideration, yes.
Okay, so when I asked about the fact that if you go to slide 11, you started in the hole $369,000. If we take option 2 on the parking rates, you are now up $275,000. And if we restructure the loan, you're up another $200,000. So now you're up $475,000. And I understand that we do want to replenish fund balance for the beach fund, but there were these 2 projects that you mentioned that's why you needed the money. So do you not need the money for the pier? Is it just the bus stop now that you need the money for, plus fund balance?
Well, if it's your decision that
Excuse me, not
Yeah.
fund balance, reserve.
if I'm gonna have that excess money, then I wouldn't need it out of the penny sales tax for the pier.
Okay, so your request that we spend the $400,000 out of the penny sales tax is contingent on us not approving one of the 2 options or both. Okay, all right.
Commissioner Maxwell?
Thank you.
If I may, if subsequently our restructuring of the loan is approved, so there's several ifs involved.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Sorry.
We still need to come back with the restructuring of the loan. So if okay.
Meaning if that's approved by banks, by the IG, by you, by me, by
No,
us?
Madam Mayor, I think the ACM was just making sure you had in your assumptions, not just the parking increase, but also the restructuring of the loan, which you did in the beginning, I believe.
Yes.
That's
So last but least, it's just a summary of what we talked about, what we're bringing in revenue-wise versus our expenses and the current deficit if we don't change parking or the loan restructuring. So we have the option to increase parking. As you can see, if you do option 1, 50 cent, you have $403,000 in revenue streams. You can do option 2, which is the split option, which is going to bring $644,000 in revenue, and then we can restructure the loan. So those are the 2 topics that we wanted to bring forward for discussion today.
Commissioner Maxwell, you have the floor. I'm sorry, the floor.
Thank you. There were 2 or 3 main items that were in need of repair or replacement on the pier. Would you repeat those for me, please?
Yeah, so the concrete piles need to be jacketed. The concrete pile caps, they need crack repairs and patching. The concrete beams need crack sealant. And then a lot of the timber decking as well as the hand railing desperately needs to be repaired.
Okay, can you tell me what the life cycle of all the concrete components are?
So the last time we had work done on the pier was
That
about
wasn't my question.
10 years ago. And I do not know, I'm sorry, concrete is not my area of expertise.
So it was done 10 years ago.
Yes, was the
So
last
this was
time.
post Wilma, Jean, Francis, Santa Claus, and everybody else.
And that wasn't a full rework of the pier, that was partial work done 10 years ago.
Okay, so, all right, I'm just trying to, in my mind's eye, find out whether or not these things are supposed to last for maybe 20 years, and maybe there was some damage, from back in those hurricanes or whatever that maybe should have been covered back then instead of right
I don't know the life expectancy, but I can do some research and get that back
That's
to you.
okay. If it's 10 or 12 years, I imagine it's a pretty harsh environment. And
Yeah.
Spalding, if it's, if it gets a little crack in it, it's gonna, I get that. We went through that with the casino building. Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Okay, so, adding to R&R, I take it now you know that it's been 10 years and it may not be another 10 years, so we add that to an R&R. So I always say we need more in our reserves. Penny sales tax, as we move forward, City Manager, can you outline, when we talk about budget items, what we've spent penny sales tax on and kind of give us a breakdown? A one-page sheet, this is what you've already spent penny sales tax on, this is how much we're getting, this is the estimate, and just so we can see what we've spent penny sales tax on and what, could spend penny sales tax on, as we move forward, because I can see other things or other suggestions wanting to be taken out of the penny sales tax.
That information's available, and I'll forward it tomorrow morning because I submit a quarterly report to the Palm Beach County League of Cities that serves as our oversight committee. So I'll definitely make sure to CC you guys moving forward, and I'll provide with that update tomorrow morning.
Okay, and then moving forward with the suggestions, I have no problem. I mean, looking at the breakdown of the cities, I have no problem going $2.50 weekdays and $3 weekends and holidays, and that will give you a little bit more. And again, I have no problem putting that into reserve. And then there was one other. As you move forward, I mean, you're the expertise. You're the expert. Try to make sure when we do this construction that we do it around your soft space on the beach. Your slow times. I know it's kind of hard now because you're very busy, but the last thing we need is that beach shut down and people move to the right when you have a wedding.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Thank you.
Mr. Robinson?
I do appreciate Commissioner Amoroso's comments on the penny sales tax. I'm afraid that we're treating it like a candy store, and that it's more than that. It's an opportunity to invest big time in our city, not just and we do need to fund maintenance on a normal business method rather than on a gift of a penny sales tax. I'm concerned that $2.50 here and $2.50 there is I'm looking forward to a larger investment in the city.
Commissioner Hardy?
And I'm sorry, I don't mean to prolong I was looking forward to sanitation, but.
I've been waiting for that discussion.
But can we, do we need to talk a lot about the parking rates? I'm very glad that we're talking about raising them. Let's raise them as much as we can, and tomorrow would be okay with me.
Commissioner Hardy?
What I'll say is, and I'll go last to first, on parking rates, while I recognize that there is a risk that we might not accurately, we don't know how inelastic demand for parking is. I would say that parking demand at the beach is pretty inelastic. Talking to our parking consultant about a number of things, people always say that if you raise parking rates, they won't come. They say it, and then the second you raise parking rates, they're still there, right? So very few people, an increase in parking rates, it will not, at this level, my opinion is that it won't have the negative effect that we would obviously not like to see. The other thing is, on the penny sales tax, I very much agree with Commissioner Robinson. I don't like the way that we have approached the penny sales tax thus far. I think we need to make a decision. I think we need to have a series of workshops early on in the process and make a decision about all or most of it, of what remains, rather than making little decisions every year about it, because that's, I just want us to be very intentional about how we spend that sum of money. And so, for that reason, I don't know how I would feel about making a decision this year about $400,000. Like, it sounds like like a nice thing, right? Coming out of the penny sales tax, but the fact is that's a part of a larger discussion about all the things that we could spend this money on that we should be having.
Isn't that part of our upcoming visioning session?
It can be, depending on what each of our individual visions are. It's certainly, what we yes, but it came up, and I really don't like being confronted with having to make decisions about penny sales tax on a day to day. I don't think it's the right way to approach it. Other cities decided what to do with their penny sales tax money before they even got it, bonded it out, right, and got all the money up front. And we are not, I'm not going to name names, but it's a neighbor to the north, right? And so I think that's a very sophisticated approach, and I think that that's an approach, that we should emulate. Not necessarily the bonding part, but the making a decision about the money up front.
Commissioner Maxwell?
I don't know. I don't like this idea of just jacking the parking rates because you can. I think it's a real bad precedent. I think, it's the easy way out. It just seems to be we're taking the easy way out. We want everything, and we'll just take the easy way out to get it. And just go ahead and put it on the backs of the people that drive in there every day. We'll penalize them for our bad management of the past. So I won't be voting for any parking rate increases.
I've been right beside you in it, Mr. Maxwell, through the years. Unfortunately, the funding sources that we were promised, or that we thought would increase, or whatever, haven't still. We're not anywhere closer to having rented out the upstairs space. We're not anywhere closer than that. The pool is closed. We don't even have that operating expense anymore. And it's still not getting any better. So until we're able to, increase the business model, I'm just at this many years without a change in it, and I've stood by you every step of the way. I just don't find that there are any other immediate solutions that I can hear that are going to give us that revenue. In the past, it's been, we'll get the space upstairs leased, and then that next year came and it didn't get leased, and it didn't even get fixed, and our staff is still in it. We're going to have this, and this is going to happen. None of those things happen. And we're not any closer. We're finally just getting the flooring resolved and be able to do that. But then what do we do? Just, relocate our staff as the only place that they can work in so that we can lease that space and bring in still not enough money to do. I mean, I'm just, again, this business plan, when we have our meetings, when we talk about the pool and that, that's going to be that's going to be a game changer in regards to whether or not we make this beach casino model one that works. And we've got to get to that next level. In the time being, I don't know where else to come up with it other than that. Commissioner?
I totally hear you, Madam Mayor. If I can present an alternative that is a little, it's not easy, but it's doable, and other cities have done it. Other cities that I would consider sophisticated. What they've done is they've taken the parking rate decision out of the hands of the city commission. So what some cities have done is they've had the city commission set a parking standard, and then you use that parking standard to set parking rates, right, separately. So for example, let's say you have an area where people come and you say, well, I want to charge enough so that at least 10% of the spaces are open on a Saturday when people are there, right? So through trial and error, staff experiments with parking rates over a period of time. They discover what price people will pay, right? So that, at least 90% of the parking spots are filled and 10% of the parking spaces are open for people who are coming there and, would like to go. That takes the parking rate decision out of our hands. It's obviously difficult. You have to be very sophisticated and savvy with your technology, but it's an option. I like option 2 that was presented here. Just raise the parking rates, 50 cents, an hour during the weekday, and $1 an hour on weekends. It's simple and intuitive. But if you don't want to raise the parking rate, you can just set up parking standards and let rates manage themselves. It's been done before, and it's been done successfully. Just a thought.
No, I know Delray Beach is doing it right in certain areas right now.
Exactly.
And I'm familiar with it. I just don't know necessarily if the technology level of the average user of our beaches is savvy enough to understand that concept right now.
Sure.
I don't know. Commissioner Maxwell?
Why don't we just, what happens if we just go ahead and eat the doggone loan? which is what everybody would like to do anyway, I think, at the end of the day. I mean, to drag this out for 25 years, which is essentially what we're talking about here based on the presentation I heard tonight, is silly. Is it about 20 to 25 years we ended up paying this back? Somebody help me out here.
The restructure of the loan, what's the longest term of it?
We had 11 plus 6 plus something else, plus what we've already gone through. So that's 17, 18, 19. So we're looking at, 25 years. Hell, you could have financed a couple of homes. So, I mean, why don't we just, what would be the impact? Would that impact us really bad if we didn't pay it back? Because I'm getting really tired of having these conversations every year. You know what? I think I've made my point. They should have never done the project in the first place. Okay, and they screwed the citizens of Lake Worth in the process. But to have these conversations year after year after year after year, to kick the can down the road and split hairs and get in all these ideological conversations about, well, we should raise it 50 cents, or we should, when the moon's over here, we should do this, and when our hand's over here, this is silliness. Let's just cut this to the end, cut it out of the budget for the beach, let the beach operate a little bit of a surplus, put that money in the reserves, fix what you need to get fixed, and let's talk about spending money from the surplus and just run the doggone thing that's the way it's supposed to be run in the first place going forward. I've just about had my fill of this. This is just silly, absolutely silly. We're making fools out of ourselves.
City manager? I thought you had something to say.
No,
Oh. Okay.
if you want,
Commissioner Robinson?
That sounds like a reasonable approach.
I'm sure it is.
I don't think raising the parking rates is an easy way out. It's a business decision. It's not an easy decision, but it's business, and we have to have the income to settle the expenses. So nobody. I've been at the meters, listening to people. People have said it's a bargain. People have wanted to leave because they were frustrated with the meters, and they were third in line, and the person in front couldn't operate it. That's the only time I've heard frustration with parking at the beach.
That must have been our old meters. Our new ones are good.
Well, and the new ones can be adjusted instantaneously. So if we're concerned about losing rates, then the next day, if you so decide, and I can appreciate Commissioner Omar Hardy's interest in taking it out of a political decision, but we need the income. I hate to mention a cash cow, but I remember talking about cash cows, and this is an approach to income. It just doesn't make sense not to raise it.
Vice Mayor?
If we're gonna talk about taking the loan off the table and non-repayment, I'd like to hear from, Larry in the water department and, know exactly what impact.
Brian.
I mean,
You're thinking of Larry Johnson.
I have parking.
Larry and parking and Brian and water.
I think he's thinking a lot.
That's Larry and his other brother Larry.
Was this
His other
face
brother
off?
Larry.
I had Larry for parking. Sorry. We beat parking.
Welcome back.
Only because we need to be very clear what it does to these other, how it affects your
Yes,
department.
Commissioner. Brian Shields, Water Utility Director. Yes, Commissioner Hardy said before, I think you said 0.5%. As I recall from Stan Tech's modeling, it was like between 0.25 and 0.5%.
What's the big number? What's the total, do we have to raise in rates? What are we,
No,
What are
it's
we-
almost negligible. If you look at 0.25% on a rate increase, whether it's 3 or 3.25%, you're talking about pennies per month
and it
per
doesn't
resident.
affect any of your,
No, we could,
projects, anything like that?
we could absorb it.
Okay. Thank you. You might wanna stay on.
Madam Mayor,
Yes.
if that's truly something that y'all want us to explore, we need to look at the full financial impacts, the legalities and all that. And I think that's what you're alluding to, Vice Mayor, to see on the water fund specifically, because there is debt, there's all kinds of capital projects, and there's things there that we may not know. So we'd like to have the chance to explore that before y'all.
Yeah, I just wanna make sure that nothing comes back later and says,
And if-
because we did
well,
X, that it. unfortunately.
If y'all want us to
affected.
pursue the details on that as an option, let us know now.
Yes.
I think we should look at all options, but I want to be very clear what it looks like.
And if I understand,
Commissioner Hardy?
I am 100% okay with asking the people who come from all over the county and from all over the world to visit our beach to pay to rectify the financial situation at the beach. I am not okay with asking every single ratepayer in the city I'm not okay with asking them to rectify our financial situation at the beach, right? So if you want to use the beach, you should help rectify the situation. But there are people who pay for their water who, look, I'm not necessarily a beach person, but there are people who will never go to the beach. Maybe they don't like it, whatever. And we're asking them to pay for it. I think it should be the people who use the amenity who should pay for the amenity if there's a financial issue with the amenity. My notes here say that if the loan from the beach fund, this was from 5/22, if the loan from the beach fund doesn't get repaid, the rates would have to increase by 3.5% annually instead of 3% annually. And that's a real cost to everybody in the city. I would rather just the people who use the amenity pay to rectify the financial situation there. I think that makes the most sense. I can draw a direct line from the users to the amenity. I can't from every single ratepayer to the amenity. And I don't think it's fair.
Commissioner Maxwell?
Well, then if we're so anxious to raise the parking rates, I have a solution that makes us all happy. You go ahead and make it $1 an hour increase. You take the $800,000, you pay off the loan, and you still have money for your surplus. And we call it an afternoon. But we pay off the loan in the original time frame. How much do we owe? $4 million? So you pay it back in 5 years.
It's 10 years.
5 years. It puts us up.
$500,000.
No. $800,000 for 5 years. You pay it off. Now we're back to where we were originally, paying off the doggone loan.
So $800,000 a year?
Then we
You'd still be,
tight.
you would be $370,000 ahead of the curve by doing it this way, because you're in a $370,000 deficit now. If you eliminate that deficit by eliminating the debt, you're now 307, well, you're only 200 and whatever it is, but you're a few $100,000 ahead of the game. You get the concept? If you're gonna stick it to the users of the amenity, you might as well just stick it to them really well at $1 an hour. Look,
Why can't you do the combination of
why
the
can't
two?
we just be done with this issue of paying off the debt and move forward? Okay, we're dancing around the issue here.
Because we made a commitment to doing so.
Well, you know what? We told people before they did the doggone deed that it wasn't the way to go, and nobody listened then. So nobody cares now whether or not we fix it, today or next week. Let's just get it done. Let's get it done and off our plate.
Commissioner Robinson?
Can I just ask that if we're talking about business and income and things that really make sense, that we don't refer to them as sticking it to anybody, that this is a decision.
No, we aren't sticking it to
One
somebody.
at a time, please.
We're asking people.
One at a time, please.
We're asking for a fair rate that I believe everybody is going to be willing to pay. And that's not sticking it to anybody.
We're sticking it to them because we're
Excuse
asking,
me.
Madam Mayor.
Commissioner Maxwell, I just wait to be recognized. That's all I ask. Thank you, dear.
Well, you said you don't want us to go back and forth. I just want to
Well,
make sure.
I was giving you an opportunity to go. There you go. See, I told you, kinder, gentler, Mayor.
Well,
Did you have something else, Commissioner Maxwell?
No,
I'm sorry your light was on. I just wanted to make sure I got you. Commissioner
this
Robinson?
this is one of our problems in Lake Worth, is that every time we have a problem, it's treated as a real detriment, not a challenge, not an opportunity to fix, but it's screwing somebody, or woe is me. And I'm really, we're on the right track. We've been on the right track for years. And I think that when we talk about how bad things are, it's not good.
Commissioner Robinson, I just, you know what, I absolutely love what you just said. I absolutely love what you just said. You know what, if we would just we're getting back to the point where we just can't get out of our own way again here, and it's absolutely ridiculous. Things are moving in a positive direction. Let's continue moving them in a positive direction. Now all of a sudden things are going well and going in a positive direction. So let's step in our own way again, so that we can fumble and sit here and go back and forth like this. I really don't understand it. I think we've pretty much tied it up now. So let's get a consensus on what people want to do, because that's what we're supposed to be doing, is making decisions. So let's make decisions on what options we're looking for. How about we go down the line? 1, 2, 3. Commissioner Robinson, starting with you.
What was the question?
Question is, what do you support? You support?
I support raising the parking rates.
Okay.
I
The 50
have
cents.
for-
The 50 cents on.
No, I don't think
weekdays and
50
the-
cents is enough, and I'd like to have a policy that we raise it every year, a small amount, but let's raise it to where it is helpful and is part of our income business.
I don't know necessarily if yearly is the right way to do it. I don't know, Juan, that would be a question for you, but I do know that we have had no increases
Well-
since we've been open for several years. So I think I mean, we put increases on our water and our sewer and everything else. We have a
Leading to what
I
Commissioner
don't-
Hardy said about.
Madam Mayor, if I may, we can bring back annually during the budget process an evaluation of the ongoing parking system, and we can make corrections based on what the market's doing. That's a common practice in parking. So, to Commissioner Robbins' point, we don't have to be married to one rate. We can just continue to evaluate.
Well, what is the dollar if it was a dollar all around? What's the total? Is that number?
Let's start with that.
If it was, I'm just looking. You brought it up, so I just want to make sure that we're looking at what all the.
I have it.
Okay. Okay. With dollars. Okay. 806. I see it here on
Okay,
the
David.
presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
So Madam Mayor, you're asking each commissioner if they want option 1, option 2 in the parking, and if they want to refinance
Correct.
the loan to where we pay it in the sequential manner.
Which you asked of us in this presentation.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So Commissioner Robinson,
Is he 1 or 2?
I think he wants the dollar
number 3.
across the board.
You
Yes,
want-
across the board.
Dollar across the board, not just
Okay, so
Weekends.
Madam Mayor, Commissioner Robinson's offering an option that's not up there.
correct.
Okay. So what about the refinancing?
Which goes to ones.
It goes to one.
He's gonna take care of it.
A dollar across the board was part of option 1. We highlighted 50 cents, just kind of split it in half.
Yeah,
Okay.
Okay.
That was part of the.
What about the
option.
refinancing, Madam Mayor, on the?
What about the matter of refinancing?
Well, that's a bigger question. Commissioner Maxwell makes some sense.
I appreciate that.
Okay.
Okay,
So we'll put him down as a
1.5.
maybe.
squirrel.
Scroll.
I'll come up with something else.
Vice Mayor? Vice Mayor?
One is $1 across the board. I can do that. But also in our original conversations, we talked about in budget cycle, look at it, see what it's doing, whether our parking is down, up, and it should be part of our budget to look at every year. Cost of living increases, just like we look at everything else. As far as the loan repayment, yes, I'd like to see your numbers. From Corinne, I'd like to see what it looks like if we don't repay the loan. And if we do, I'm still concerned that it's gonna take us so long. So, I'd like maybe a little more options there as far as getting it paid back quicker if we don't look at doing away with it completely.
How is it possible, I'm just trying to figure this out, on the loan repayment thing. I'm concerned about the ramifications of eating the debt and making the debt go away. You know what I mean? So that makes me nervous, what it will do to our other rates that are affected by it.
Yeah, we don't.
So I don't have enough answers, I guess, to make that decision. I'm more apt to support the plan that was presented because it at least covers paying back the debt. And yes, it finances over a longer amount of time, but it's refinanced, it's done, and we're paying it every year. As opposed to writing off the debt, I'd rather repay the debt with the new loan terms. That's my choice. And the dollar is fine with me across the board.
Madam Mayor, if we repay the debt faster than we had otherwise scheduled to repay the debt, then ratepayers, for example, in the water fund would be less affected than they would be otherwise. So if we accelerate repayment, it would be a good thing for the average citizen. I actually favor an across the board $1 increase in parking rates. That would get us an extra $800,000, and so we go from being in the hole 369 to being up 431, and we don't have to restructure the loan at that point. If we just give you, a dollar. So, like we can afford to, repay the loans to the water fund, to the self-insurance fund, and to the capital fund at the rate that, on the schedule that we intended to do so when it was originally borrowed from those funds. And I think that would be good for everybody. And, with that much money, potentially we can think about accelerating repayment even even
What about the pier and the other things?
There's that. But okay, so think of it this way: we were originally considering. It looked like we had all settled on option 2, which was the 50 cent during the week and the $1 on the weekends, right? So if we did that, and if we restructured the loan, we would have been up $475 at that point, right? And so that would have been all the money that's available every year for stuff like the pier and bus stop and all this stuff like that. Well, if we just raise parking rates $1 across the board, instead of being up $475, doing both parking and the loan restructuring, we're up $431. So it's a pretty good deal. We would still have money available for the pier and for other capital issues at the beach if all we do is raise parking rates $1, and we could continue to repay the loan at the on the schedule that we intended to do so, which I think is important.
I'd rather stay at the 500,000 that we're doing right now.
Precisely. Or more.
Or more if we have it.
If we have it. Yeah.
I'm more comfortable with paying off the loan, is basically what I'm saying. I do want to abandon the loan, I'd rather repay the loan, because I'm afraid of the ramifications of the other funds, is what basically I'm saying.
Yes, ma'am.
Madam Mayor, if I may, just before we get ahead, the one thing that drives the parking rates beyond the best beach in Palm Beach County is Mother Nature. So we need to be cognizant that we've been fortunate with not having super wet summers. We've been in drought conditions most of the years we've been open, with the exception of certain months. But weather, so it porpoises. So I don't want us to get ahead of ourselves. Porpoising.
Did you realize that?
We just need to be conservative and strategic in our approach on how we deal with the parking rates and future revenues, how we're going to spend things, and not start creating a wish list of items that we may not have the dollars. We may have a really bad hurricane season. We may experience, interruptions beyond our control. Zombies, whatever it might be. But I just thought I'd add that caveat as we go through and try to put a final to some policy direction.
Right. Commissioner Maxwell?
Yes, Juan, thank you so much, but that could happen no matter what we do. Right. So we're going to be adversely affected no matter what we do.
50% right.
Okay. Now that we've shocked ourselves back a little bit closer to reality, I absolutely hate the parking increase, but if that's the will of this commission, then I say we go for the gusto here. And we, by doing so, well, let's start with the restructure of the loan. That needs to be paid back sooner than later. And the way I figure it, by eliminating the $550, I don't know why we're lumping that $100,000 R&R. That was never really a condition of the building being built. That's kind of an afterthought on top of the woefully inadequate CAM or whatever that they had put out there. So we're talking about the $550,000 in potential debt service plus interest or whatever. If you stick with just the $550,000, you back that out of our current revenue, that gives us the $381,000 surplus, roughly, before we do anything with the parking rates, before we touch the parking rates. Am I correct?
Corinne, I'm deferring that to you.
I'm sorry,
Can you repeat that?
What I'm saying to you, according to my calculations, if you take out the $550,000 out of and not include that as part of our expenses, that gives us about a $380,000 surplus
Currently.
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 Now think what I just said, a $380,000 surplus if we don't touch the parking rates. If we touch the parking rates at $1 an hour, according to these calculations, that's an additional $800,000.
On top.
That gives you $1.38 million in surplus per year. What I'm saying to you is, we need to have an accelerated repayment of the loan out of that $1.38 million, and you still have plenty of money left over to add to your balance, your fund balance.
Where does the 300-something thousand come from? Before you do anything, where did you
Shane,
get
can you
the
go back to the
$300,000?
first slide, please? The first one, with numbers. This number here. So to Commissioner Maxwell's point, if I may,
That includes a full
Your
amount.
current expenses are $3.563 million.
right,
If you take out the $550,000, Jay, I hope I'm doing this right, that gives you a difference of $3,013,000 minus your income, 3,194. 198, maybe I beg your pardon, it's $180,000. $181,000, so it's $181,000 plus the $800,000, which is roughly $1 million surplus per year. If you do the $1 a year increase, you have $1 million in surplus
projected.
in this fund.
Where's the R&R?
Doesn't
It's in
count the
there.
R&R. Doesn't count the R&R because the R&R was never a condition of the business model on the beach. Okay, so it is what it is. So you got $1 million roughly of wiggle room as far as a surplus. You got plenty of money to increase your fund balance, and you have plenty of money to pay back the loan at an accelerated rate. The question is, what's the accelerated rate look like? That's my,
That's what we can bring back at a subsequent meeting, the
Okay.
details in that.
Well, if you,
Go ahead,
in
City
the
Manager.
neighborhood, if you took off the capital needs that you had at 625, the first
650.
year, you would have whatever the remainder would be left over. So
$200,000.
so again, I'm not comfortable with raising the parking rates, but if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it right and give yourself some money to use and put all this stuff behind us.
Okay.
And if I may, Madam Mayor, before we wrap up and move on to sanitation,
I don't think we'll ever get there.
I would just ask for consideration if the parking rates could be increased sooner than FY19. At least consider that option.
Vice Mayor?
Yes.
Yes.
I didn't need an answer.
Yes. But also, if we're looking at paying back the loan early, which I agree with, that we need to pay that loan back, we still need to be aggressive on the R&R. Yes, it wasn't in the original, but we've learned from our mistakes. We see a lot of issues. Something was making noise last week from the top, one of the
Fans.
Right.
one of the fans. We need to be very aggressive. We're on the beach, things keep popping up. God forbid if we have a hurricane or a cold season, and numbers are down, we just need, I think we need to be a little bit more aggressive on the R&R.
Where does that expense go?
The
Let's take it out
R&R,
of that figure.
Madam Mayor, if I may, for clarity, thank you, Commissioner Amoroso. R&R isn't attributed just to repairs on the building; it's for the entire property. So windsell repairs, replacing the split rail railing, to go to aluminum all the way across, things like that. Air handlers. So it's not just attached to the
things that are
building.
popping up that
Correct,
we
to the
need
building.
to
Painting the
have no
casino
trouble.
building, which is due, that alone is 75. So historically.
And we have to do that a lot more than we thought we would have
Correct,
to do.
correct.
Styrofoam
Life
shutters.
tower replacement,
Styrofoam shutters.
we can bring back that list, at a later meeting to show you what our projected capital replacements are coming.
We have a beautiful beach, and they come here, we're a destination. We can't fall back on our, our maintenance. We
$100,000 isn't even enough to do the job, correct? Sorry.
First of all, I would like to see the list of things that we'd have to pay for, and then a schedule of their replacement, so that we can figure out annually what is R&R. Obviously, if you don't do it, it becomes a sort of deferred liability. So yeah, I would certainly like to see that. And you have my support on increasing parking rates before fiscal year 19 actually begins. The sooner we can get the money in the door, the better. Yeah, that's all I've on an accelerated loan replacement after we do the pier. Maybe we should just say, hey, we have a target for reserves. We would like to add to reserves by X amount each year, and then say everything above, over and above that can accelerate the loan repayment above and beyond the $550,000. I know that there's a train of thought, for example, that says the water fund will be okay without an accelerated repayment of the loan. My opinion is, it would be much better for the ratepayers if we do. And so, whatever that we can do to keep people's water bills as low as they can be, then we should do it, especially if it's coming out of the beach fund. If it's us, we're paying the money that we should have repaid in the first place. So,
City Manager, did you want to make a comment?
No, Madam Mayor, I was just going to say we'll be bringing back an official loan document that the finance director and his team will be pulling together to give you those options, so that when
Okay.
you enter into that agreement, you'll know full.
So I believe we can move on to sanitation. You know what? I think we should take a quick break before sanitation. There you go.
For sanitation.
Let's take a sanity break before sanitation.
Persistence.
It's the sanity in sanitation.
Madam Mayor, it's 8:07.
If everyone would come back to the dais, please. If everyone would join me back on the dais.
Okay, we're ready to go. How are you? You having fun yet? My age, I have fun every day. It's really fun. You gotta be retired. That's the key. I'm gonna hang with you. For 55 years. I make a living. I'll start hanging out with you.
Jamie,
If you don't mind me. Yes, sir.
10th Avenue, 10th to 13th, between B and C, the alleyway. Can you,
Did you find where you were
Make sure
supposed to be today for your meeting? For your,
north?
oh,
All right, let's resume this Monday, July 16th, City Commission Budget Work Session with sanitation. Mr. Brown?
B and C. Sorry, I was taking notes. Jamie Brown, Public Services Director, for the record. Good evening, Madam Mayor, Commissioners. Commissioner Maxwell's giving me some eyes. I'll be presenting Sanitation Fund tonight and discussing some rate changes that we're going to be proposing. And we're going to start off with the residential rate. Now, the residential rate is something that is on the non-ad valorem tax roll. And it's currently $245.75 per equivalent residential unit. We're looking at doing an actual 5% reduction this year, which would now make that amount $233.47. I've been here 7 years. There's been no change to this actual rate, I believe, in the last over 10 years, because it definitely has not been done since I've been here. And I believe my predecessor did not do one either. It was right before he came on board. So this would be in conjunction with, going to the next slide, an actual increase in our commercial rates. Now, the commercial is not on the non-ad valorem assessment. This is part of the actual fee schedule that is approved with the annual budget. If you look at this chart, we've got at the top our current fee schedule for commercial collection. At the bottom is the proposed. It is a 27% increase, but if we go to the next slide, these rates have not been touched for quite some time. This first comparison is with Boynton Beach. For an example, if you looked at, and obviously the size of the container is on that first column, and across the top is the actual frequency that it would be collected per week. If you look at, like, say, a 4-yard container, 4 times a week, right now it would cost in Lake Worth, with the proposed increase, $554.30. The same thing in Boynton Beach would be $590.39. So even with the 27% increase, all of our rates on this particular fee schedule are still below what you would find in Boynton Beach. If you go to the next slide. Same situation in Deerfield. They actually have a 7-time option on there as well. But same thing here. If you looked at like a 4-yard container 4 times a week, with our proposed increase, we'd be at $554.30. Deerfield Beach, you're paying $912.78. So I mean, they are significantly more. If you go to the next slide, now we're getting a little bit more into the right realm. West Palm Beach, everything in pink up there on West Palm Beach, we would actually be a few dollars higher than West Palm Beach. Everything in yellow, we would actually be lower. So as you get to the larger containers and move to more frequency per week, West Palm Beach actually gets more expensive. Now, I will say that West Palm Beach and Boynton Beach both have contacted our solid waste supervisor. They are looking at increasing rates this year. So these charts would then continue going up even higher and kind of separate further from us, but I'm not sure what they're looking at increasing those. Also in West Palm Beach, there's an additional charge for wheels on your container.
Charge you for the wheels.
So a perfect example of this would be like if
Per wheel.
if you had a 2-yard container and it was just collected twice a week, here it would be $142 for Lake Worth. Per this chart, it would be $136 for West Palm Beach. But if you have wheels on that container, which all of them do, that now jumps up to $141. So you're right back to where we're at.
Jamie,
Yes,
question. Do these other communities allow you to contract your own dumpster?
For commercial collection?
Yeah.
No, now recycling is a different thing, but for just commercial collection, no.
So, because one of the things I hear from the business community is that other communities allow them to get their dumpsters wherever they want, whereas you have to get them from the city of Lake Worth. That's an argument that I've heard, that other cities don't do that.
I'm not sure which community. There may be some that do that, but a lot of is it commercial collection like actual dumpsters, or are you talking about roll off?
I'm not sure.
Because if you remember a couple of years ago, we did contract out our roll-off services. So there are cities that do not handle roll-off services, and then you're able to collect, hire anyone you want to basically bring in a roll-off container. It just so happens we have a contract with Waste Management, so only Waste Management handles our roll-off.
So
there are
roll-off would be construction
yeah
debris.
construction debris.
Not your normal business collection.
Right.
Correct. Now there are cities that don't have contracts with, say, a Waste Management like we do, and then the business owner would. It's just up to them. They can call whoever they want to bring a roll off in, place it, throw all the construction debris in it, and then they haul it off.
I'm not sure that wasn't brought up to me as to whether or not it was which one, but they said, why do we have to get it from the city of Lake Worth? I've always been able to bring in whoever I wanted to bring in.
I'm confused on the answer of the question. The other communities do not allow you to privatize.
For commercial
That was your
collection, typically not, because it's within their businesses within that city. So the city does their own hauling, so they typically don't allow other companies to come in and take.
Is it just the dumpster itself? I mean, I'm just trying to figure out what this comment was made with.
The dumpster itself for. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm not.
I don't know. I'm just trying to get to the bottom because people are saying, "Oh, other cities allow you."
Madam Mayor, there may be some communities that do not do their own, and they may have an open market. We'd have to do some research because we're not familiar with who that may be, as an example, but we can find that out.
I'll ask more specific questions.
In a instance where there is a contract hauler or the city is hauling themselves, flow control is how they base their business model and their pricing. So they need to be the only provider.
What does the city of Lantana do? Let's just say they're just to the south of us.
I believe they contract out through one of the waste haulers.
I'm not sure whether is it Republic. It might be Republic.
Yeah.
I'm not sure who
And they
they're
definitely
using.
do their construction demolition. They don't handle that.
Okay, and where are we in regards to a city, say, the same size as us, like Green Acres?
Well, Green Acres they have a contract with Waste Management. They don't do their own hauling as well.
Vice Mayor? Commissioner Hardy?
Just a question. When you say residential, does that include, for example, residential apartments, that have dumpsters, or is that considered commercial?
Per our code of ordinances, residential is everything that is 8 units or less, and then all your single family homes. Commercial would be anything that's 9 units and more. Okay. Anything over 9 units would classify as commercial. And one thing I did forget to mention on the residential side of things, with the 5% reduction we were talking about, that would now drop us below Lantana, which is at 240, 240.12. This would actually, our proposed rate will put us at 233.47. So it's about $13 and change. Coral Springs, up until this fiscal year, was actually underneath us also at 239.75, but they upped their rates in 2018. So they're now above us. They're already at 248. So, yeah.
So, help me understand why we would lower residential and not commercial. What was the reasoning behind? Isn't there a cost of service, and wouldn't there be a increase in cost of service? What's the reason?
We had an assessment done this past year. It was the workshop we had back in May on our entire refuse operation. And one of the things that came out of that study was that our commercial rates compared to other municipalities our size that do the same functions we do were extremely low. And that on the residential side, we were kind of toward the top of that ladder. So if there was a way to actually increase the commercial while decreasing the residential, that would be something to be a benefit to the city.
Okay.
And as I go into the presentation, I have some other things that'll show what we're looking to do.
Okay, and now this is gonna get a little complicated. So in your downtown corridor, for instance, I'll use my building. you have one large dumpster, which would fall into what category? What is the size of a dumpster? Because you have it broken down.
Well, yeah, we offer the 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8 yard containers, and 8 are your largest ones you see out there.
Okay, so I would assume it's a 2 behind my building? Or
I think you have a 4.
okay, so
I think
let's say
yours
it's
is a
a
4.
behind my building. It's shared with a restaurant, a realtor, 2 other restaurants, and 2 other retail. Now, I would assume it has to be picked up 6 times a week, because it's usually, restaurants are picked up 6 times a week because of the food, yes?
Yeah, depending on the yeah.
Okay, so it would be the highest cost, but then how do you split it up based on you physically have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 businesses of different sizes and different categories using that one dumpster?
It's typically percentages, but I'd have to look at how that one right now is currently being billed.
Because that's happening in multiple places. I think Dave's has their own. I don't know. Yeah, maybe Dave's has their own. Maybe Paradiso has their own. But I'm curious to see how it's going to work out, and that we're not getting too greedy. I mean, that we're doing the cost of living and we're doing an increase, but we're not getting top heavy on certain people. For instance, I had made mention last week to the city manager, the dumpster within the Lucerne. You had Kilwins and you had Starbucks that filled that dumpster and could be picked up more than 6 times a week. Now they're gone, and that dumpster's still being picked up 6 times a week, and it's barely got anything in it, because the residential piece of the Lucerne has its own dumpster. So I just want to make sure as we do it that we look at the uniqueness of especially the downtown and different areas, that we're not overcharging, that we get, I mean, it's gonna have to get a little bit more creative, but that we're doing it that benefits everyone. The smaller businesses might end up paying more because they get put into a category.
Now, it's definitely a case-by-case basis, but keep in mind, the only thing changing is the actual rate on the fee schedule itself. The billing and how we bill and the percentages, none of that is changing.
Okay, but we may need to look at how we're billing. And
Correct. We can look at all that, correct.
Because, for instance, we used to have our own garbage cans behind my building, and you went to one shared dumpster because it benefited the city and it was easier for you guys to get in and get out. It may not have cost, it may have benefited the merchants and been less costly for us to have our own garbage, but everybody agreed because it was easier. The last question was, you said wheels and non-wheels. What's the purpose of having wheels and not having wheels? What's the difference? Some of them have to wheel out, but wouldn't it just make sense to have them all on wheels?
We do. I guess West Palm Beach has an option where you don't need them.
Okay.
If you have the actual space where you can just open the actual dumpster enclosure and drive straight in with your front load and just dump it and sit it back down, there's really not a need. We have most of our locations, you don't have the actual space to do that. So they need to be wheeled out, dumped, and then pushed back in. So it really depends on the area and if you have space to do that. But all of our containers have wheels.
Commissioner Robinson?
I'm happy with the projected additional revenue. I'm concerned that if we're going to save the fees are going to be $173,000 less. How are we going to market that so that it's appreciated? If people don't know it, they're going to continue to pay the rates they're paying, and we still have a problem with electric rates. I know people are asked about the comparison to FP&L, and they insist that we're paying more to this day. And how long have we been at parity with FP&L? Anyhow, so for 175% decrease, I'm not wild about. I just don't think it's going to be appreciated, and I certainly don't want to stick it to commercial rates.
So you're suggesting that we wouldn't do the 5% decrease?
Yes.
Because but keep the commercial increase?
Well, not to stick it to them, so at 27%, but maybe 20%.
Well, when you look at and the breakdown is basically, it's not a 50-50 split. Basically 59% of if you're looking at our total refuse revenue for all of our accounts for the entire fund, 59% of that would be coming from residential and 41% would be coming from commercial.
So we would be percentage-wise lessening the increase in income if we, that's to be worked out. I just wanted to make that statement that I don't, for the 5% decrease, I wonder how much it's going to be appreciated. And I certainly don't want to be, we're still very competitive commercially. So that's great. And mobile homes, I'm concerned about this service that we're.
Well, can you go to the next slide?
Can we finish this conversation before we go to the next one?
Yep.
Okay.
Then the mobile home service part of it would be the next conversation.
Is that a different?
That's the next conversation.
Okay.
Correct.
I'm done.
Okay.
But
Commissioner Hardy?
Just Commissioner, I know he had, I would hate to steal the time. He put his thing on.
Oh, did he? Commissioner Maxwell.
Would you like some time now?
I'm sorry, were you talking to me?
She called on me, but I said that you had your light on first.
Oh.
Now I can go.
The primary reason for wheels on a dumpster, other than the ability to move them for the truck, is sanitation, so you can keep the dumpster pad clean. You can't clean a dumpster pad with a dumpster on it that doesn't have
Correct.
wheels. You can't get under it to clean it. That's the primary reason for wheels. The other question I have, or the question I have here is that when I look at your proposed rate scale, your multiples of service, 1, 2, 3, 4 through 6, are exempt multiples of your single one-time pickup. The question I have is, why isn't there some sort of an economy of scale benefit for being picked up 6 times a week?
That's just how the rates are set.
Okay.
And if you look at other municipalities, that's kind of how they're all
Some of them do,
laid
West Palm
out.
does not. So the more frequency you have in pickups, a
Mhm.
little bit less it becomes for each one of those pickups. And I'm wondering if,
Well, actually, West Palm is more. The more frequency that their rates are actually.
oh, I beg your pardon, you're absolutely correct. But I'm just curious why there isn't some sort of a benefit for multiple pickups. I mean, we don't have an additional cost in equipment or manpower.
Yes.
Our fixed costs remain the same.
No, if we are servicing a property twice a week compared to 6 times a week, there's definitely an increase in equipment use and manpower.
But your fixed costs remain the same, the variable cost and the labor increases.
Fixed cost as in.
Maintenance?
Truck, depreciation, fuel.
Yeah,
Fuel's a variable.
You're utilizing everything more, so your costs are more.
Okay.
So, I'm sorry, unless I must have missed.
That's all right.
Commissioner Hardy?
Oh my gosh. What I heard Commissioner Robinson say was that, yes, decreasing the residential rates 5% does confer a benefit to the residents. But if we don't actually communicate to the residents that, hey, you got a rate decrease, we're losing $173,000 a year out of your budget, and we're not really gaining the goodwill of the resident in exchange, right? That basically most residents will not perceive the decrease and therefore appreciate it. And so I actually think, this is why we should have a Facebook page, but it would be great if we could communicate with our residents. When we do this, we should do it regardless, but it would be great if we could get the credit for doing it by communicating to our residents the same way that we did with rate parity, that, hey, we're lowering your residential refuse rate. I know,
Yeah.
but some enough do to where I think we certainly gained some benefit by communicating, with them about the electric rates, I think we should communicate with them about the refuse rate so that we can actually receive the benefit of doing that. That's all I have to say.
If I could just comment on that, Madam Mayor, that's definitely something we will be doing. Obviously, this is step one. This is the first time we're bringing it to you. So this would have to be something that you guys would approve of. And then obviously there's a process you go through with not ad valorem, where we have to contact the property appraiser and notify them as of what our intentions are. And so, yeah, there would be a point in time, though, when we would be notifying people and advertising that, hey, there is a decrease.
And if I could add to that, Madam Mayor, we anticipate if this gets approved, upping our game with helping people understand, obviously, like you said, the reduction, but more importantly, improving the waste stream, trying to get a better.
It's coming.
And you know, that's what he's going to talk about. So that's going to be important, especially since we're going to be going away from the single waste stream to recycling stream to the double. So he's got money anticipated to go for that purpose, which he'll get to.
Yep.
Vice Mayor?
Okay, and I wanted to jump ahead to that, if you don't mind, because I think we're there.
I had to.
I just want to make a comment then before we move on. I just want to make sure that we're still, the majority, even though we have the Park of Commerce where some larger businesses are relocating and some projects here and there, we're still a community of small businesses, a lot of small businesses. And I just want to make sure that we're looking at the rate structures, that we're not, we're still trying to incentivize infill and renovations and restorations and all those kind of things. I just want us to keep in mind the small business community that we are, and not to, I know we did a rate study on it, but just to keep in mind the little guy, and all those mom and pop operations that operate here within our city, when it comes to the dumpsters, when it comes to the things. This is stuff that is, it means whether they go from 3 employees to 6 employees that they need or whatever, as opposed to going from 100-person employee operations. We've got a lot of them here, and I just don't want us to push our way out with rates. Just keep in mind the little guy. That's the community that we're built on, and I just wanted to remind you of that.
When I get to a later slide as to how the funds will be utilized, you'll see that we try to keep it under still some of the neighbors around us, but also enough where we can actually start doing some of the things we need to start doing. So that was the intention of showing the comparisons with West Palm and Boynton. And
okay. Vice Mayor.
Sorry.
Okay, are you ready to talk about the, how will additional funds be utilized?
We're not there yet.
Let's continue with the presentation.
Because it's part of a, yeah, can you go to the next slide? They're like two that are out of order. Okay, so.
Do you have something before you moved on?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I just wanted to comment on your concern about the increase. Basically, that increase equates to less than $2 a month per pickup. That's the impact. It's less than $2 a month per pickup.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, mobile home parks. And you probably have to look at your handouts. It's pretty small up there. Okay, so mobile home parks, we have 4 in the city. Right now, they are all, as of today, they are all being charged a different rate for some reason, which no one seems to know why. But you've got Orange Grove, that's currently at, this is breaking it down to per unit, a monthly rate. So monthly rate at Orange Grove, you're looking at $16.55. Palm Beach Mobile Home Park, $19.56. Holiday Mobile Home Park, $20.48, which was actually our current residential rate before a reduction, that $20.48. And then Holtz was $19.24. So out of the 4 parks, there was only one that was actually even paying the residential rate. Where the rates came from, I checked with former supervisors and refuse and how this all came about. It's just been like this forever. So what we're trying to do is standardize everything and make everything a lot more efficient. If you look over to the far right side, there's 3 columns, the 2 in pink and the 1 in blue. That is the SWA non-ad valorem assessment. Everyone gets charged that. That's for disposal. That is not changing this year. So if you look at each one of those parks, and this is based on the size of each park, for instance, Orange Grove Mobile Home Park, the very first line there, their charge for SWA per unit is $12.44. So for a total monthly rate for a unit in the mobile home park, you would add that $12.44 to our city rate, the $16.55, and that's how you get that $28.99. Now, if you move to the second table, These are the proposed rates. What we've done is we've actually taken each mobile home park cost per unit per month and made every single one of those 2420. So now you're not going to have a different rate for each park. They're all going to be the exact same rate. SWA, the proposed rates stay the exact same. And if you go down to the bottom table, you can see that for the Orange Grove Mobile Home Park, the difference per unit per month, because they were at the 1655 rate now, is $7.65. For Palm Beach Mobile Home Park would be $4.64 difference per month. For Holiday, you're looking at $3.72, and for Holtz, you're looking at $4.96. So making these changes, we're looking at a total annual cost difference of $41,100. So this isn't a huge revenue generator for the city. This is more of, we need to start covering what we're doing, and we need to kind of standardize everything. But if you multiply that additional revenue over a 5-year time span, that gives us $205 or $205,000. So that's going to allow us to then continue to replace that vehicle and still get, I'm sorry.
Where did you get the 2420? Where does that number come from? How did you create that number?
That 2420 in the units in each park, that's what's going to generate that $41,000 number, which is what I needed to hit annually in order to have that vehicle on a replacement schedule. So at the end of that 5 years, getting that 41,100 every single year.
41,100, I'm sorry.
If you look at the very, where it says annual cost difference, at the very bottom of the page, and you add all those up, it's a difference of $41,100 annually.
So we're losing that every year?
No, we would be making that additional.
Okay.
But what that's going to do over the course of 5 years is it's going to give us $205,000, which now it's supporting itself. Now we can replace that vehicle that we're using to do that collection. And then if we stretch out to 6 years, that just gives us $246. That just gives us an extra $41,000 to do that. And that's the cost portion of it. The other portion of it is the actual method of collection. We're currently doing the door-to-door service, which is inefficient. There's a liability there. For us, for the city, the most efficient way to do that would be what you would see at like apartment communities, where you have a dumpster enclosure, or you have centralized locations, single points of service where you would then take your material to, and then when we come into the park, we hit each one of those, dump, and then we leave. And we're not actually winding through these smaller right-of-ways. They're not like, Tropical Ridge or some of our neighborhoods where we have substantial right-of-ways to actually do the collection. It just makes it more efficient for us. So there's going to be a question as to, do we stay the course we're on right now, or are we going to be able to kind of move to a more efficient way of collection?
Do other communities, other cities do door-to-door service in mobile home parks?
Yep, people do both. It depends on where. They're both ways, but you have to keep in mind also different mobile home parks have different size roadways as well. So it really depends on the park. There are some of the county that do, there are some of the county that do not. And when you look through the entire state of Florida, it all differs depending on the park.
To the operations there, I guess, my first question is, have you communicated with the residents at the mobile home parks?
Yeah, we had a meeting with the, this was back in May, with the management for all 4 mobile home parks. We had a meeting over at Public Services to kind of bring this up and let them know it was coming, and that we were looking at doing single points of service instead of the door-to-door, and kind of give them a heads up.
Did you discuss anything with the residents?
Not the residents, no. This was the start of this whole thing.
Okay, is there any intention to discuss anything with the residents?
They would go back, and we have not set up any meetings with any of the residents in the mobile home parks because they have their own association meetings and everything. Our main thing was to meet directly with the management to give them a heads up, and obviously this was not something that was a favorable option for them, but.
Sure. And I guess, so you're saying that you chose this rate, 2420, because you backed out of it based on the cost of replacing the vehicle.
Correct. We need to, just like we do with our actual vehicle replacement schedule, which, we only had, we just put it together a couple years ago because there just wasn't one before that. We were just kind of replacing at random. We need to have everything on an actual schedule.
And it's the vehicle that you would be using when you
Correct.
change the service. So it's not the vehicle that you're using currently.
Well, we got another probably 2 years out of the one we're using currently. Maybe
But
two.
if you change the way that you collect the trash, when you have to use a different vehicle.
No, it would be a front load.
Okay, all right.
We could use a front load vehicle to do those because we'd be actually getting, just like downtown, dumpster enclosures.
Right.
Pull straight in, dump them,
And so you're using
back
that
right
kind
out.
of vehicle already in the mobile home parks?
No, right now we're going door to door, so you have the rear loads.
Okay. So it's a different vehicle that you would be using if you change
Correct,
the
because now
operation.
you're talking about an actual dumpster
Right.
compared to one of our 96 gallon cans.
Okay.
That have
All
to
right.
be either hand dumped or if we have a side load, depending on one-way streets.
I just think you should make an effort to communicate with the residents. I understand it might be unpleasant, and I understand that some of the residents are not going to. Obviously, they're not going to like it, but I think you should communicate with the residents directly, not necessarily the management company, because, as we know, some of these management companies are not the best, and they're not the most scrupulous, and they don't really communicate with the residents the way that we would prefer. So I want to make sure that the residents know and understand. I don't not support it if it's, especially given, and I've driven around some of those mobile home parks, the right-of-way is very small. I really cannot imagine, in particular the mobile home park that I'm thinking about, I cannot imagine a garbage collection truck going down those roads. So I'm amazed that you've been doing it this far. I can understand that you would want to, for safety and also for efficiency's sake, to do something that you would consider to be more standard for this type of residential arrangement. I guess, my question is what you gain in efficiency. I just hope that we actually make good use of it, any gains that we see from efficiencies. So those are my 2 cents there.
I just want to say that I understand your frustrations in the operational side of it, but you're going to be hitting people in these mobile home parks that have no decision-making skills. I mean, they can have an opinion on it, but it's going to be strictly the city, and you have the operators of these mobile home parks. I think that to hit them with an increase and also to change the way in which they do it is kind of like the double whammy. I don't think it's going to be, I know it won't go down very well. I'm sure it won't be very positive. I just sort of feel like the mixed messaging is, we claim to be this, well, we can do that because we're a hometown. We say that in certain places. We say we can do that because we're a hometown and we care about our people and we this and we that. And then I feel like we're kind of going to yank the, I think if you're going to increase, I understand the increase because that's operation expenses and we have to have it. That I get. I sort of think that could we maybe do it in parts or just see how it goes, or can we compromise something on it? Because I think you're hitting them twice in one fell swoop is going to be probably hard for them, and the people who'll be impacted really don't have a voice in this. It's the operators and us.
Madam Mayor, just a couple points of clarification, just so we're on the same page. We're not billing the individual owners for this service. We bill the property owner, just like we would a apartment complex.
Who then charges it to his
and they make the business decision at that point to fold it into their costs however they choose, which could mean a mobile home owner could eat the cost and still provide the door-to-door pickup in some other fashion. It's kind of a business model if you think of it as a commercial operation where people are living in like an apartment building. So it's not a fait accompli. I think that if you say the owner gets a market-driven rate, I'm pointing to the screen up there, that they automatically are going to choose to do or not do the extra service on their own. They still have that option.
Vice Mayor?
A couple things. So what I see missing from this chart that I'd like to see is it obviously costs you more money as far as time and manpower. I would assume you have to have at least 2 people,
Yes.
if not 3. It's taking you a longer period of time in these parks. I grew up in a trailer park, so I know exactly what you're talking about. I've visited all these trailer parks. I would like to see those numbers because obviously we need to take into consideration, the cost, the time, you know, the efficiency. For instance, in the Lucerne, building, I see it, nobody likes change, but, you know, when I take my garbage out, the garbage happens to be on the same floor right outside my apartment. But I can take it to the chute, boom. But if you live on the other side of the apartment, you have to come down and around, and so it's a little inconvenient for some people to take their garbage out. But, you know, the overall, you know, the cleanliness, I think it's a package, but I'd like to see some of those numbers.
At least you're inside, though. At least people are gonna be, are elderly and seniors walking in unpaved and bumpy pavement and outside.
I think we need to take that into consideration too. In some of these trailer parks, you know, it's substandard housing. We come after substandard housing in a regular home environment with our code department. Why are we not doing this? Why should people in a trailer park have to live in substandard housing? Why aren't their streets paved? Why aren't there, you know, better, you know, situations? And it's elderly people that, you know, again, we should be looking at all that too, because they shouldn't have to be living in the substandard housing environment.
Commissioner Robinson?
I do question why we don't provide service to a single-family trailer versus a single-family home. I've visited all the trailer parks. Some of them already have dumpster locations, and it seems to work. I've also visited others where I don't see it working, and I really want to emphasize more what the mayor was referring to as a cut in services. These people deserve service like anybody else. Granted, you know, the mobile homes aren't aren't ideal, but they are home to somebody, and picking up their trash is our responsibility. And if it's a quarter of a mile away, I don't think that's a service that is fair to take away. We have that small blue truck. What is that used for? Little Big Blue and Little Blue?
Little Blue is used for downtown, for the tight alleyways downtown when we need to dump.
So we have tight roads in the trailer parks. I see no reason. We've been doing it with the big trucks in the trailer parks. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And so, you know, in the interest of efficiency, which I love, why don't we use the Little Blue to service the trailer parks? And I've talked to the people. They're willing to pay for the service. They understand increase of cost and service. You're going to kick a hornet's nest if you're going to meet with residents. Just keep the service and charge a reasonable rate. That's good business. And I think a dumpster a quarter of a mile away is bad business for everybody. What I would like to see, though, is when we do raise the rates, and I hope we do, that the management doesn't exceed the rate increase that we're charging.
I don't know how we would be able to regulate that, because that's their private business, and I don't even know how they break down everything.
I'd like to make sure that all the residents of every trailer park know how much we're increasing the cost, so that they know what management is doing. And I just want to continue the service that we provide everybody else. You know, I understand it's much easier to pick it up once and it's a service that we should be providing homeowners.
Mr. Hardy?
Yes. I do agree with Commissioner Robinson that we should communicate directly with the residents so that they can know exactly how much their garbage collection is going to increase going forward. I can imagine a situation in which some really crappy landlord, and I'm not casting any aspersions on the owners of the land in these mobile home parks, But I can imagine a situation in which a really crappy landlord raises the rent more than what we've actually charged, and justifies it by saying, oh, there's a garbage increase, and the residents don't really know. So I do think that they should know. On the other hand, oh, by the way, I should say on the other hand, I agree that residents of mobile home parks should pay should basically receive the same service as anybody else. The question is, who is anybody else when you're talking about mobile home residents, right? And so I live in an apartment, right? Like this is these commercial rate increases are going to go straight to my rent, and I don't want to get cute and say, well, that's a business decision. No, if we increase the cost of service, it will surely be felt by the residents who pay their rent. So it's not like I can't draw a straight line from the cost of the refuse collection to a rent increase. You most definitely can. I think it's cute, too clever by half to say that you can't. But I put my garbage in a dumpster. It's not a quarter of a mile. I walk probably one building's length down. There are 4, I believe, in my complex, and I put it in the corner. It's going to be up to the management companies to as far as where they place these dumpsters. That's my understanding. And again, if what we consider as commercial is 8 units or more, right?
Yeah, 9 or more.
9, right?
Yeah.
So why why would we treat the mobile home park differently than we would treat a townhome development that has 9 units or more, right? So if I live in a townhome with 9 units or more, I've got a dumpster instead of individual door-to-door trash collection, right? Wouldn't that be the case?
That is the case. And actually, next month we're in the process of we're updating some of the language in our code of ordinances, like Chapter 12 specifically, health and sanitation, as well as I know William, he just walked out, but addressing some of the right-of-way stuff as well and some of his stuff. But there's some ambiguous language in there when it comes to the mobile home parks, as far as should they be counted as residential versus commercial.
That's why a multi-family thing to me.
Well, that's why we're updating on that language, and that's why we're looking at doing a completely separate rate, so they don't fall under commercial or residential. The mobile home parks are their own thing. They have their own special mobile home park rate, which is this, and not residential or commercial.
Well, is this mobile home park rate? And I haven't really done the math here, but I'll just ask you: is it somewhere in between the residential rate and the commercial rate?
It is.
Okay, so
Yes.
so they're not paying as much as I'm paying, and they're paying a little bit more than someone at a single family home
That's
would be
correct.
paying. And I guess the difference between what someone in a single family home will be paying and someone in a mobile home is paying is the fact that the rights of way are wider. It's a little easier to get by. It's more cost intensive to do door to door trash pickup in a mobile home than it is, so. But then you know what? We should separate the rate conversation from the method of collection conversation, because you can just charge them a fair rate.
Again, we weren't trying to make a profit on this whole operation. The whole thing with the rate being set at the rate it is so we can actually pay for the operation, the vehicle that's going to be utilized, and we can actually swap that every 5 to 6 years.
Well,
so that's why we didn't go with a 28 or a 30, because we don't need to go that high.
Couldn't you just if it's really about replacing the vehicle, couldn't you? I mean, instead of using the kind of vehicle that you would need to pick up a dumpster, couldn't you just charge them a rate? Yeah, like Little Blue or whatever vehicle that you would need. Couldn't you just charge them a rate that would replace a vehicle that would allow door-to-door trash pickup?
That's why we're here talking to you guys to see if we can get some kind of direction on what you feel would. I mean, obviously from an efficiency standpoint, it would be much easier and much more efficient for us to go to particular locations within the park. If we've got 4, and we laid out large maps when we met with the property owners, so we could actually look at possible locations for dumpsters that would go on each particular property. But again, that's why we're kind of bringing this to you, to see if that's something that you'd be in favor of, or if you would rather prefer to keep the door-to-door service.
Can I put myself on the record right now? So I guess I'll put myself on the record by saying, while I am not bothered by asking people to take their trash to a dumpster, it's something that I do daily. I can understand how people who have been used to trash collection a certain way might be more than peeved by it. So what I guess, my position is maintain the same operation, charge them a fair rate for picking it up in these narrow rights of way. Whatever you need to charge them to replace the vehicle and to act, so that they pay for their level of service, charge them that, communicate directly with them, not just with the management companies. That's where I stand right now.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Okay, so I've got a couple different views here. So again, I have no problem with, putting dumpsters in and, in a housing development, you have multiple dumpsters. Is there a rule of thumb on how many dumpsters has to be per units in a development? Commissioner Hardy mentioned he has maybe 4 dumpsters in his complex. Is there a...
For apartment communities, yeah, we have to look into it as far as mobile home parks are concerned.
Okay.
Because this will be the first time we're actually looking into doing this, and they're all different sizes.
And they're all different sizes.
Correct.
And with the exception of the larger one, I would think that if you had at least 2 dumpsters in one of these parks, you would be, not that far away, depending on, maybe the end.
We would have to have more than 2.
Okay, so then
for
we go
sure.
back to
Yeah.
4. Okay. So at least 4 in a complex. How many units are in your?
Many, but
Okay, so moving on past that. Okay, so if we go and continue service, I'd still like it. I mean, you have figured in your cost the replacement of a truck, but I'm thinking, and I'm pretty sure I'm right, that there is a larger cost of service to do mobile home parks because you need multiple people. You're picking up a lot of different garbage, and if you go to Little Blue, can Little Blue hold? How much does Little Blue? Can it hold 335 cans at its capacity?
No, we'd have to look at doing multiple trips too.
So again, there's additional cost for, if you continue it on. We've done this across the board for the last 7 years. We've looked at true costs and what is the true cost of doing business. So if we keep it on the schedule that it is now, we need to make sure that we charge a fair cost, but I want to make sure that it's a cost that covers your expenses. So next year or the year later, when we fine tune a little bit more, we don't go back and want more money out of these people. I want a true cost that covers your expenses. If we're doing Little Blue to make it easier and you have to do 2 or 3 runs, that's an additional cost, multiple people. So I just want to make sure that we're covering all our hard costs like we do with everything else that we look at in the city.
Mm-hmm. And obviously Little Blue is a much cheaper vehicle compared to one of our larger ones.
So all that should come into consideration.
Correct. And if we look at stretching that from a 5-year or 6-year, obviously there's additional funding there as well.
Yeah,
But
and the maintenance, the replacement of a Little Blue or an
Correct.
additional Little Blue if you've got to make multiple runs.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Commissioner Robbins?
I mean, you didn't consider raising the rates downtown because you're using Little Blue, right?
Well, downtown's commercial. That's a
It's
different
okay.
operation.
So, well, and so we're raising the rates on the mobile homes. The space in mobile homes is something a whole lot different than a new development. And so finding for management to find a space to put a dumpster is less of a problem than the person living the greatest distance from the dumpster. We've been providing the service. I think that it's only, I know that mobile homes aren't probably our, I get it about mobile homes, but this is a service that we provide. This is what government does. And to raise the rates and cut the service, wow. I would want to see that to my neighbors in the mobile homes. This needs to be handled very carefully, and I think that we might be setting ourselves up for legal expenses. Let's be fair about this. That's all.
Well, I spoke exactly what I said before, so.
I agree.
I agree with that. I think Little Blue is a great idea, and like I said, just look at your hard costs. It's not, you know, we wanna cover our costs for things. That's not, you know, and it hasn't been addressed, this inconsistency in the rates, all that. Let's address that. Let's go ahead, do that, find out what it's gonna cost to do that or change the operation. But again, I agree with Commissioner Robinson on that.
No, I
Right.
agree with you.
Madam Mayor, is
City
that a
Manager?
consensus from the commission as far as go forward with the rates, but provide the door-to-door still? Is
Just
that what I'm
double
hearing?
check the rates too,
Double
to
check, make sure.
make
Granted.
sure, because now you're talking about a different operation.
Right.
Okay, I think so, yes.
Okay.
All right, and let's move on now to the next one.
McShane, can you go back one? Because there were two that were out of order. Yeah, that one. Okay, so here's a kind of a summary of what we've discussed this evening. So you've got the 27% increase in the commercial is looking to give us an additional 504,760. And what I did was I basically averaged the rates from going back to 15, 16, and 17 to get these. So you're looking at an additional a little over 500,000 for the commercial rate. For residential, the 5% decrease would be 173,487 that we're actually reducing that. Mobile home parks, 41,000. So at the end of the day, the additional revenue we're looking at is 372,373, and I'm already grinning. So I'm surprised there's only one light lit right now.
I don't know what's
Why are there
going
not
on.
5 lights?
I don't know what's going on here.
My
There might be a
question,
motion to oil Commissioner Maxwell. He's squeaking.
my question is,
Yes, sir.
Commissioner Robinson, why don't you go for it?
okay, just my simple question, how much do you think you're gonna spend on advertising the decrease?
Well, if you want to go to the next slide, I don't know if you want to hit this first. I guess the one after this one. Okay, the last slide. So, how will additional funds be utilized? Okay, based off of our assessment we had done last year, you know, and it's no secret, you know, I've mentioned it before when we had our workshop back in May. We're kind of operating very antiquated, and we're in the dark ages as far as our actual collection and everything's concerned. We're looking at doing route optimization software, which means GPS in the vehicles. It's going to establish a baseline for us, which is now going to allow us to get more efficient. So there is an obvious cost to that. Next one, Shane. Revamp of our recycling program downtown and other commercial properties. You know, we're looking at doing, and it's just on the next one, but additional containers, routes, equipment. We're looking at additional enclosures downtown, J Street parking lot. Obviously, we looking at the K Street and everything. We need to look into, you know, the parking study and everything as far as location, and depending on what comes of the parking study. The solar compacting bins at different city locations. Next one. Cost sharing program to facilitate commercial enclosure compliance. You know, the city manager harped on this for a while, but a lot of times when you're entering and exiting the city on Dixie and some of those, we have locations where they're weird, funky situations where the dumpster's just sitting there. Most of the time it's unsightly. You have mattresses kind of sitting out in the open. There's no enclosure. Having some kind of incentive program and some kind of cost share so we can help those particular properties fix whatever that is or come to some kind of agreements on what can happen there. Creating a recycling center at the south end of the beach. We're looking at doing some in-ground containers and some other exciting things that are kind of new technology and stuff that we really need to be getting into, because we say we're a recycling community and we want to kind of revamp this entire program, especially with moving to the dual stream over the single that we have right now. So there's going to be a huge push as far as promotional activity and everything as far as that's concerned. Increased frequency with our vehicle replacement program. So we're lowering our maintenance costs in the long run. Next one. And transitioning from a partial Sunday service downtown to a full service. Because as I hear from one commissioner who shall remain nameless, a lot of times on Mondays after the whole weekend push, we have an issue with overflow. And last one. Promotional activities for city and local schools, which kind of goes to what Commissioner Robinson was talking about. You know, we've done vehicle days and some other stuff, but really starting a recycling program in some of the local schools and really starting to push some of this promotional stuff out there, as well as some other city activities we would look to do some promotion on, like such as fireworks and some other things. So that is what we would actually be using the additional funds for. But if you want to rewind back another slide.
Fireworks?
I'll show you fireworks.
The slide that kind of had the summary on it. That one.
I love it.
Commissioner Maxwell?
Yes. Is there, or help me understand why you chose the south end of the beach possibly as being a recycling center?
Well, this would be one of those in-ground facilities where it would not block the view or anything, and we're not going to be building any kind of enclosure, but we need something down there. We've had an issue as far as just the quantity of trash up the beach.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're talking about a recycling center for the beach complex.
Correct, for the beach
Not
complex.
for the community. I thought you were suggesting that we would bring our trash over the bridge
Oh.
and recycle it on the beach. I just want to make sure.
Bring
I'm
all your
clear.
trash to the beach.
Yeah,
No, there would also, we were looking at locations, not just the beach,
I'm
also
feeling
at
a
Bryant
little bit
Park.
better. I'm really thankful.
Also
bring
at
it on
Bryant
the
Park
bus.
and multiple city locations. So,
Okay, so let me go down the list. Let's start with the bottom. Promotional activities for the city and local schools. Yes, and we've been talking about this for years.
Yep.
But as we move forward now, let's take it one step further. A couple years ago, I did a plastic bag ordinance. We didn't move forward with a ban on plastic bags because I have a problem with how do we monitor, maintain, and enforce a plastic bag, but styrofoam, everything in the downtown. For instance, my new location, I'm going to bag ass and recycle plastic bags. Cheney Brothers offices it, all the companies that the city merchants are using offers it. It's a little bit more expensive. So as we promote what we're doing, I'd like to hook up with Cheney Brothers and these other companies so we can start getting the merchants and the restaurants on board. Styrofoam downtown kills me, but it's cheap. But now as we get these new products coming out of the glades, may cost a little bit more, but it works. The recyclable plastic bags. So we're not going to ban plastic bags, but we want everyone downtown to use the bags that are recyclable. That are 100% recyclable. And again, they're a little bit more, but I think that needs to be part of the whole marketing plan, that we do it on a larger level. Love the GPS, the recycling programs downtown. There's a lot of grants out there.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of other companies that have talked about partnership with stuff. So before we spend our own money, let's see if we can get them to spend some of theirs.
Yep.
You're not talking about a public-private partnership, are you?
Yes. Additional plastic, glass, aluminum, yes. The solar trash recycling we've been talking around, again, there's a partner out there that will partner with us. So, I'm hoping that we're not spending all our money, recycling centers. The CRA has put in the new recycling cans on the west side of Lake Lucerne. They have in their budget, was just approved, or was proposed this last Tuesday night to do more recycling downtown. But the biggest concern I have is that we all come together and that we make sure City Hall recycles. But when they come and pick it up, it goes into the regular garbage. Okay, so if City Hall isn't recycling, how do we expect the rest of the city? So we need to pull all this together so, we're not wasting our time at City Hall, we're not wasting our time downtown, that we're actually recycling the products. And with our new partnership, I'm hoping that happens.
Commissioner Robinson?
I haven't heard how much of this we're gonna spend on marketing or whatever you're talking about, fireworks and.
Fireworks.
That's good. Hey, we just talked about a bus stop that we didn't, anyhow.
Do you want me to get into that, or? We had, it's I think total we were talking about, what, 60?
Yeah, we're still looking at, there's a lot of opportunities to sponsor and do outreach. I think Wendy's alluding to the fireworks, where we have events where there would be the promotional materials, the tchotchkes, the classes, and things like that. So there's sponsorship opportunities for the sanitation. As far as direct outreach, we're still working on the budget numbers, but I think we're close to 60.
Yeah, I think it was like 60, 65, something like that.
We would get you that in the final numbers, but we want to devote enough to where it matters and does fulfills the job.
Oh, yeah, spending a little doesn't excite me. I like to spend a lot.
Oh, it's not.
The question is, can we incentivize, I don't know what the additional cost is from Cheney Brothers or
For the
anything,
bags.
but, I'm sorry?
For the bags, that was one of the.
Yeah,
yes.
for anything that
Yeah.
is makes a difference in styrofoam
put our
and
logos on it.
recycling, can we incentivize
Yes.
just directly to a restaurant instead of fireworks?
I think it's a whole menu of things that we want to do to try to reach as many people across as many different venues as possible. So those are all good ideas that we need to roll into the full package.
Well, I just assume spend the money directly on the change by the restaurant, then hoping that, good.
Commissioner Hardy?
Okay. So I guess I have a question, and it relates more to our operations as far as giving people options who live in commercial places, or options for different people who have businesses and commercial buildings, right? So at my parents' house, they have this trash compactor thing, right? So there's one trash drop off, right, for everyone who lives in a complex. And you can literally put unbelievable amounts of trash in this thing, right? You put it in, and the person presses a button, and it compresses the trash. And the only day there's ever an issue is Thanksgiving, right? So, which is obvious why that would be an issue. But my question is, we don't have that as an option, do we? Like, if there's an apartment complex here, or a townhome, a very large townhome development, or something like the Lucerne wanted to do that, do we give them that option?
We have a couple, and like we have one like at Publix, we have one behind the old Publix, which is now Bodegon.
Yeah.
So it's larger like commercial facilities, but not at actual apartment buildings or townhouses or residences. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, those
It's
two
amazing.
actually compactors.
What I guess are some of the pros and cons of giving apartment complexes and the like the ability to choose that?
Yeah,
I imagine cost would be
cost
one.
is a huge
Yeah.
part of that, because you got to keep in mind that there is a maintenance portion that goes along with those.
Okay.
And then cost is a large portion. The other thing is there is a liability, because we had looked at one point, the two that are actually kind of behind Lilo's, the ones you called me on this morning, that we're gonna take care of, but having that having those be compactors, I mean,
Bad things can happen.
Well,
Accidentally
yeah,
or
people
on purpose.
enjoy one or two on a Friday or Saturday night. Something can happen. It's not a good thing for the city to have just sitting on a city parking lot. It's not the best.
Yeah.
Cardboard is
So there is a liability component to that, and why those are typically found like a large grocery store type thing.
Okay.
And not just in one of our public parking lots.
That'll be. Oh, I didn't mean in like a public parking. I meant.
Apartment complexes, but
Yeah,
there is
okay.
definitely a financial aspect to that as well as liability.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And wait. Those are only the cons. I asked for the pros as well.
The pros would be that you can actually put more in it, because it obviously the solar trash cans are actually compactors.
Okay, and
But
you can
they're
pick up
just on a
less
smaller
often.
scale, so you can fit a lot more material into those before they need to be emptied. So you actually lessen the frequency you need to service those.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I appreciate that. I think maybe we should consider allowing people to, allowing apartment complexes to do that. It's certain. Yeah. If they choose to, obviously we shouldn't provide it to them at a rate that does not cover the cost of service. But if I think it's a nice option, and it's less unsightly in a lot of cases than having these dumpsters. The other thing is there a circumstance under which we can compel a commercial building to higher levels of service? For example, like let's say a commercial building chooses to have their trash picked up, once a week, whatever.
Yes.
And it turns out that, for the people who live there, they put way too much trash in. Can we compel them to go twice a week, 3 times a week, et cetera?
Absolutely.
What's the
We don't
process for
allow any actual garbage on the ground. So there'll be places that we've done multiple times before where they'll say we only need 3 times a week service.
Right.
If we go there more than once and you've got your dumpsters overflowing, there's trash all over the dumpster itself, obviously 3 times a week's not working. So we up it to 4. If that's still not working, we up it again. But we maintain and make sure that people have the proper level of service, just because it just becomes more work on us when we go to actually service a container.
And the gentlemen who ride in our trucks, they know to come back to you and report, hey.
Oh, absolutely,
there's
absolutely.
Okay, and that's
Absolutely.
done regularly.
We're always dealing with level of service.
Okay, so that's not something that people have to worry about if there's a new development coming in and they're worried, oh, there aren't enough dumpsters. Well, if there's not enough, then we can compel a higher level of service.
Correct.
Basically.
And in going the opposite direction, you had mentioned the right where Starbucks had moved out and Kilwins. Obviously, that level of service is going to have to decrease. But typically, they call us to let us know when they're leaving, so they're not continuing to get billed month after month. But
Commissioner Maxwell?
Thank you. I just want to comment about the compactors. Typically, these compactors are key operated. They're not typically set up for people just to randomly walk up and hit the button. And I think they're an excellent idea, particularly behind Lilo's, that recycling container back there. It's used for everything but cardboard, but I would think if the local restaurants each had a key and were instructed, this is where your cardboard goes from now on, I think that could be a benefit to all parties concerned. But typically, they are key operated and they are restricted as far as your access to getting in there. So if somebody had a couple of drinks, they'd actually have to find that key in their key ring to entertain themselves within the confines.
well, it's just a matter of giving access to city property to private business.
Well,
because there's no, I can't. We'll continue. I was just going to say I can't. We can't police who has that key within the business, or if that key disappears, or we have no access.
And it's not just the key operator, it's the person sleeping inside.
you can't get in there without a key.
Well,
You know what, yeah, okay, let's continue this another time. We pontificated every option known to mankind about the universe.
Well, that's what we do here.
I'd like to know who cleans the garbage cans out.
We do.
You do. I've never actually seen the cleaning process.
can we call Mike?
I'd like to know why there are so many stars in. I'd like. Sorry, when it gets late like this, when I get caught up in pontifications, my mind just wanders. It's crazy.
That is actually all
How about
I
we go to
have.
the how do we go to the general fund now?
Yes.
That'd be swell.
Yes. Swell.
If anyone has any interesting tidbits, please be sure to let me know by turning your light on.
Right. Madam Mayor,
Mm-hmm.
now we're into the home stretch. Our next presentation's on the general fund, and I'm going to take the attempt at going through the presentation. Since our esteemed new finance director only has a week on us, he'd normally be in this position, but I didn't want to scare him away.
That's not an excuse. No, just kidding.
I don't want to scare him away.
We could have more fun.
And this will be the first main presentation that we've really had about the general fund, and this gives you an overview of where we are. The general fund is the place where a lot of the types of services and programs and staffing that you think of when you think of City Hall, when you think of the police services, the LISA contract that we have, Law Enforcement Services Agreement. And the first sheet that we have up there, when we started this process, I'll just go ahead and say, we were close to $4 or $5 million short between what the departments had recommended and where we are tonight, which we're just at $152,000 short in the proposed budget that we're working on. So it's been narrowing down, but we still have our issues. But to kind of give you an overview here, what we've done is something that we've presented many times before, showing sort of the comparison between controllable and uncontrollable costs. And in the left column, FY 2017 is your actual closed out budget. That's what we actually spent. This is our expenses. The next column is the adjusted budget that we're currently operating under, and then the proposed budget or budget request for 2019 is the third column. If you'll go down, you can see in the uncontrollable cost our law enforcement services agreement with the sheriff's office, and also along with that the pension costs that we're still carrying from the former police department, fire department that we had, as well as our general employee plan. Those are things that you don't really have budgetary year-to-year types of adjustments that you're going to make necessarily. Also is that the CRA required contribution, which when we get our ad valorem proceeds, that gets billed back and sent over to the CRA based on the TIF that's in the geographic area of the CRA and the utility costs that we pay. So you have a total here between 2017 of $21,627,000, in FY18 adjusted $22,028,000, and in the proposed budget $22,728. It's not much of a jump there, but they're staying sort of fairly consistent. On the controllable costs, in actual 2017, our controllable costs in this part of the budget really make up our personnel costs that are associated with these functions, our operating, and any capital. In 2017, while we spent, when they closed out the year, $32,953 million, you can see that there's a big jump when you go over to 2018. $1 million of that is actually the closeout budget. We didn't spend in personnel, operating, and capital all the money we had. And in the personnel especially, what we found was there was a lot of vacant positions. If you'll recall, going back into those days, we were going through a transition in our HR. We were trying to do a better job of being more attractive in recruiting people, but we had a tremendous amount of vacancy still in turnover. So we left $1 million on the table that went into fund balance, and it lowered the actual number by $1 million of what we projected. So that's why you got this sort of big cliff when you come up to 2018. On the current budget, if you look going over to 19, it's projected the total controllable costs actually are decreasing by $300,000. So I would say in many ways what we've kind of gotten into is we've wedged everything in here we believe we can at this point, and it becomes sort of a maintenance budget. I don't want to take that the wrong way, but our activity level, our investment level, the things we were hoping to see when we were talking about budgeting 3 and 4 years ago, anticipating 2019, we were hoping we would see a tremendous amount of success and activity. Now we've turned the corner and a lot of things are staging, but it didn't transpire as quickly. So that's why we're kind of going into this maintenance budget mode in the general fund. Now if you go to the next sheet, it kind of demonstrates it, the same thing I was just saying, in pie form, and you can get the different percentages there. But going from 18 to 19, you can see we dropped just a little bit. The anomaly of 17 to 18, where it's 34%, was, again, we didn't spend all the money we had, and we did add some expenses into the 2018 budget. Fund balance is an important component anytime we talk about the budget, and no more so than in the general fund. What we have right now, at the end of this budget year, we're projecting to spend a remaining almost $550,000 out of fund balance, so that our balance at the end of this year will be $4.3 million. Our projected or targeted fund balance is $550 million, is based on 2 months or 15%.
I'm sorry, can you repeat? You used the wrong terminology.
Did I?
550,000?
5,570,000. I apologize greatly. We're way over fund balance. In the projected for the year that we're bringing to you, we actually at this point are still 152,000 short that would have to come out of fund balance. But it's not a huge dip as we once envisioned we would have to make into the fund balance. We're still not at our target, but we're going down by a lot less than we first envisioned. If you go to the next sheet, this is just a couple of items. There's not a lot of budgetary overview significant items. Of course, the Sheriff's Office currently has a 2% in the budget back to us. That's what we budgeted for. They had originally requested a 3%. The last we heard from the sheriff, they said they want 2%. So we have 2 in there right now. I know that there's some other conversations that may transpire. And of course, health insurance is going to have some amount of impact. We don't know exactly what the amount is. They started out at 40%. They're talking 20%. We had budgeted 8%. And that's just in the general fund component. As we talk about the enterprise funds, of course, you talk about rates. And for the general fund, the biggest and most impactful one that we talk about is our millage rate, because that's what we collect on property taxes. We are proposing, again, in this budget, remaining the same millage at 5.4945, which is what we've had for several years now. And it always gets reported as the rollback rate because in the state law, truth in millage requires you to first establish the millage rate to collect the same amount of money as you would have before the property tax valuation, the taxable valuation goes up, your assessed values. So technically our rollback rate would be 5.0474, and to get it back up to the 5.4945 would be an 8.86% increase. The total amount of property taxes that we collect this year is projected to be $9,670,863. The money that goes out of that to the incremental funding for the CRA is just over $1.5 million, which nets us out $8,129,014. It's about an increase of close to $500,000 from the previous year at the same millage rate. Now, that's kind of where we are, big picture, in our projection, keeping the millage rate the same, wedging everything we can into this budget to keep things moving. However, there were several things that I've heard talked about and people were concerned with, and I wanted to throw them out there. And I don't know how much you want to talk about at such a late time at the night.
Can I just ask you one question?
Yes, ma'am.
So just to reiterate to people listening at home or here, so of the 8,129,000, right?
Yes, ma'am.
The total general fund budget is what?
$35 million.
Currently, it's $36,314.
Sorry,
$314,180.
no.
Million.
Golly, I'm having trouble tonight. That sanitation budget threw me over. $36,314,180, Madam Mayor.
I just want people to understand that when we talk about a lot of cities that have their taxable valuations that actually help to cover their general funds, that our taxable valuations total after CRA money's out is 8,129,000.
Roughly 25%.
Yeah,
Roughly
25%.
25%.
25% of our general fund budget.
That's correct.
Just to make a point. Commissioner Hardy?
I think, first of all, that point is well received, and I think the implication there is that we should be doing whatever we can to increase the tax base here in the city, which this commission has done a good job of, and we can continue to be extremely aggressive in tax base increasing activities by way of the LDRs. So can I go to the that one. So Mr. City Manager knows that I've been frustrated, right? Because I don't think people have any idea of the amount of good ideas that die, right, in this city hall for a lack of money, right? They have no idea how many times staff members will discuss really good ideas, and we just can't do it for a lack of money. And so I'm just going to go straight to the traffic calming bit, right? There are lots of people who have issues with people moving quickly down their streets, whether it's 12th Avenue South, whether it's 13th Avenue North, which is the first through street from Dixie Highway to A. And last year, staff put together what I would consider a fantastic draft policy for traffic calming, right? They basically said, look, if you ever, here's what typically happens, and it's my understanding, and this has happened elsewhere. Somebody picks up the phone, they call one of us, right? They say, people are speeding down my street. And then each of us individually may lean on the city manager and say, hey, Mr. City Manager, can you find a little money in the budget for traffic calming over here? And another one of us says, hey, can you find a little money for traffic calming over here? And so there are 5 different people trying to get at an issue that we know we have citywide, right? And staff put together this policy that allows us to accept applications from a resident, right? For traffic calming. Say, hey, people speeding down my street. Can you guys do a little study? Put those tubes out on the ground and let's figure out how fast people are going. And if people are actually going too fast, we would put them on a list, and there'd be a pot of money available for them, right? And we would be able to put traffic calming on their street, whether it's a speed hump or whether it's a bump out or whatever. There are like 12 different traffic calming devices. Staff was kind enough to send me a guide of traffic calming devices, right? But the point is, when I asked, so hey, when is this going to come before the commission for a vote so that we could ratify it? I was told it can't because there's no money for it, right? Like, this is like a very, very commonsensical policy. Not each one of us going bit by bit asking for traffic calming here, right? And we can't have it because we don't have any money, right? And so I think every single time we have these general fund discussions or the electric fund discussions, and we could get to that because there's some implications here for discussions that we've had about the electric fund. But every time we have these discussions here, we need to immediately link it back to some of the sources of funds that come out of the general fund. We got some money that comes from the state, sales tax and all that stuff. And then we also got ad valorem, which is the part that we control, right, by allowing certain development activities to come here, right? So we're going to have a discussion about LDRs tomorrow, and I hope that it's not the last discussion that we have while I'm on this commission. And I think that every single time we have this discussion, we need to be asking ourselves, do we want to continue to have as many good ideas die in City Hall because we don't have money? And because we don't have LDRs that are robust enough to allow a certain degree of development activity that would bring us in enough money to where we're not trying to consistently rob Peter to pay Paul. And this still is drawing from fund balance. We're still drawing $152,000 from fund balance, and it's not a recession, right? Typically, fund balances are for rainy days. There's less than, 4% unemployment here. This is about as good as the economy is ever going to get probably over the next 5 years, and we're still drawing down six-figure sums from fund balance. So again, I know this isn't a conversation about LDRs, but this conversation that we're having here should inform the decisions that we make with our LDRs. It should inform decisions that we make about development here in the city, because this is not, as you said, only 25% of our costs are covered by ad valorem, which is our property taxes. That's not enough, and we should strive to do much, much better, much, much better. So that's my little
soapbox.
Just to clarify, it's not 4% in the city; it's a little higher. But you're in this general economy, it's 4%.
Sure.
You're talking about unemployment rates.
It's a little higher than but this is the best macroeconomy that we can ever hope to have. And in this environment, we're still drawing down from fund balance. Imagine what happens if there's a recession in 2020.
And Madam Mayor, traffic calming was just one of several items, and there's several items that didn't make this list.
Correct.
We had talked about doing a greenhouse gas study. I know you brought that up a few times as a something, and there's a lot of different things, but we felt these are a good cross example of different things that we've heard y'all talk about, and the necessity to get some things done, like the parks, for example, and developing where we're going to go with investments in our park system. So these were things that I just wanted to give you examples of things that aren't in the budget at this time, and if there's more discussion we need to have about how we can shoehorn some of these things, or what your tolerance is for taking some more from fund balance, or potentially making some other maneuvers, we need to get some direction on that, or bring it back to a time when you're not so tired. I don't want you to get cattywampus. Y'all have been so good tonight. I can't tell you how appreciative we are of the input.
Vice Mayor,
My light's on.
I love you.
I see you're next.
I agree with bringing it back, but we've met with, I think most of us have met with the new consultant that is talking about the vision.
Yes.
I think this should be part of
Absolutely.
the overall vision discussion, and we need to make sure that we include everything, not only these items, but other items that we may have talked to the consultant about. Tell me what the increase in utility costs line item, about $200,000 for 2019. Why wouldn't utility costs be going down? Why is it going up there?
That reflects the same utility increases for water that you're seeing, and some of the projections that were in the other budgets. We pay the same thing as a city.
Okay, so our cost $200,000 too, but us doing the upgrade on the lighting and all that.
No,
you're not seeing a savings at City Hall.
No, not dramatically.
Okay. And
Because if you'll remember, on some of it's just like on the street lightings, the savings went against buying the equipment.
Okay, I'm just
It's a
trying to-
financing method to save energy.
Commissioner Robinson?
Are we gonna talk about the these are excluded.
Correct.
So that means later date, okay, good. Do you want to tell us some of the things that were additionally excluded?
Well, as I mentioned, the greenhouse gas study we have been talking about for a couple of years, with all the things that we've been doing to try to benchmark that to take us to the next level was one.
Aaron Davey,
Yes.
woman who
The comp and class study is listed there, and we've had conversations about that. That's a huge one. And we just, y'all approved a 3% for the IBEW. This is for everybody in the general fund. A 3% across the board for that would be $146,000. It's not included in here either. And that's something we haven't had conversations at any great detail with the unions about, but that's something we need to have a further conversation as a group if you're going to consider putting that in there. The traffic calming, I really don't have a budget number on that, honestly. To do that program, you have to have the equipment, the training, and then you've got to have actually the money for construction of implementing those devices across the city.
Commissioner Hardy?
So I'll start with labor, right? And I've said this before, but 46% of our workers, we talk about the comp and class, right? So like, excuse me, no, not 46%, but 40% of our workers are making less than the average minimum salary that they would be paid at other municipalities around us. So, in my opinion, this comp and class thing is like extreme. It's like 39% to be exact, right? So like it's extremely important if we're concerned about not only the level of service that we're providing to our residents, but the quality of services that we're providing. If we continue to underpay people to do the same work that they can do elsewhere, we will continue to get levels of service or a quality of service that we get complaints about. I think we all get phone calls about certain things for certain issues. Sometimes you get what you pay for, right? Well, I think pretty much all the time you get what you pay for. So to me, this is like a big deal. And 3% won't even do it for a lot of the people who are at the very bottom, right? I mean, like if we give them a 3% raise, Mr. City Manager, they wouldn't necessarily be within the minimum and maximum range for what they would be making on average at, municipalities around us. Would that be?
The 3% would help the comp and class minimum. It wouldn't solve it. It's
correct. Yeah. Which
it's kind of a union. That's kind of where the union mindsets are. They do across the boards, and they.
Yeah. Well, we should figure out how to pay our workers what it is that they deserve, and I wish that we could have done it yesterday rather than having a conversation about it in the future. The other thing is that this this budget that you've presented us, and I'm going to go back to the electric fund, right? We had a conversation about the electric fund where it looked like there was a shortfall of a certain number, $3.5 million, right? So I was told that shortfall has been winnowed down to a smaller amount that's still a seven-figure number thus far. Is that accurate? Right now, where you guys are
is accurate. Yes.
Okay, and it's still in the seven figures, right?
I believe so.
Okay.
The low end of that round.
So what this assumes, let's say that number stays in the seven figures, right? What this budget assumes is that we will not make up for that seven-figure sum by cutting the dividend payment, basically. I'm going to call it a dividend payment, by cutting the dividend payment that the electric
Correct.
utility pays into the general fund.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this budget assumes a what in the electric fund?
It basically is keeping the contribution flat, as we've been experiencing.
Which would require a rate increase or a severe cost decrease?
Until we get the electric fund finalized, I don't believe there's any appetite from staff side to bring you a budget in the electric fund that would require an increase in rates.
Right.
So when you ask me that question, you're kind of, have you stopped beating your wife? I don't believe yet I'm in a position to answer you, but I can tell you the commitment is that we're not looking to raise rates. Along with that, we're not looking to change the contribution because we can't in the general fund. We just aren't in a position to.
Right. So
we're doing a maintenance budget.
My point is that there's a shortfall. The shortfall, there are a limited number of options for making up the shortfall.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Either it is a cut to the dividend that the fund pays, the electric fund pays to the general fund. Either it's a rate increase. Either it is a draconian cost cut. My understanding, it's not like we're a particularly bloated machine at the electric, fund, that, we're doing the best we can with what we have, and to cut another $1 million out of the budget would be very difficult. Okay, or there is something that appeared on your comments, which we can discuss tomorrow, a special assessment, and I just, we're feeling good with what we see, but there are implications for what we see here, right? And the implications for other parts of the budget just is not good.
Well, especially, Madam Mayor, I'm not sure where that's going with the special assessment. The big change in the electric utility is, you got to remember that with Ed as the lead negotiator, and I'm getting off topic on a different fund.
I don't even know why we're discussing
because-
what ifs.
Can
we wait for the numbers though in the budget process?
We've been waiting for over a month.
Well, but that's what the budget process is.
Let me just say.
Go look back every year, same thing.
Right now, one of the biggest changes is we're seeing numbers coming in from the contract for power. That process is moving along and will take place. You'll see a contract and it'll be implemented by January. So if you take the numbers that we're seeing and the numbers that we saw with other contracts, for example, with Bartow, and plug those into our power costs, that shortfall that you were talking about starts to evaporate. It's a buyer's market.
I really, really hope it goes to zero, because either there are consequences for ratepayers, or there are consequences for the operations of the electric utility, or there are consequences for this fund. That's
as we move,
that's all that I'm saying.
As we move towards where y'all sit more directly as a board who's going to do a deep dive into those, because you need to, you're going to learn more and more about all those moving pieces directly from the director and his staff.
And so my question would be to you, the last time we had what this general fund budget implies is that there's no change, even though we know that there are issues that we haven't seen the solutions to, right? So like, you're telling me, trust you, but the things that I'm supposed to trust you about, if it doesn't work out the way that you say it does, when you say it's going to work out that way, there are implications to this fund, or there are implications to our ratepayers. That's the only reason why I'm bringing it up, because they are connected.
Absolutely.
And so,
they always are connected.
Did
you have this conversation with the city manager?
I've had several conversations with the city manager privately. I have asked at Liberty in writing for some answers to some of these questions. I have not received the answers to these questions yet. I have pursued this issue privately. And again, I would just like to know, first of all, when are we going to get numbers for the electric fund? Because it has implications for this fund. I cannot completely understand this without completely understanding the electric fund.
That's exactly what the budget process is, though. As we get more information, as the budgets get completed in the different departments, they're all put in, and then we put them together. That's how it works each and every time.
I just
part
need
of the special meeting we're going to have on electric, because there's a whole variety of issues. It's a topic that needs a lot of attention from y'all. We're working to schedule that on the 31st, the city commission of this month.
So by the 31st, right? We will have hardened we will have a very clear picture as to what the shortfall in the electric fund is, and what our options will be with the general fund.
We'll have a better picture of what the electric fund is.
You can see why that would not make me entirely comfortable.
Sure. But I can tell you that my job, and I've been doing this for 30 years, is to bring you budgets that work. And I think the team, and you've worked in a lot of cities as well, and the guys that have worked with me, the budgets work. They do what they say they're going to do. And I understand your concern with the transfer over to prop up the general fund. I totally get it. It's that way with
I want to make sure that it's going to be there. And I don't know, the last piece of information that you gave me that was hard and in writing says that it might not be there.
And what I gave
And so what you're saying is, trust me, but I've received nothing in writing, although I've asked for it.
Which was early by an outside consultant that gives you some moving pieces. We're getting closer. Remember, we're in July. We still have August, and then you get your final numbers in September. So we have some time. The 31st is when we're going to have a really good conversation in depth, and it'll include the budget discussions, okay? Along with some other things we can talk about. But it's going to be focused just on electric utility. And you're going to start having those meetings every month is our goal.
Commissioner Robinson?
Motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second? All those in favor state so by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioners.